I met a gypsy.
Gotcha, mate.
Fantastic. Hey, what's up?
We're doing it. The first Euro Gypsy Tales, mate. But Anton, welcome. I'm definitely stoked to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. Really nice to be here.
Yeah, so you noted that very different attire, but I guess at our core, both motocross and motorcycle enthusiasts, and I'm super interested to get, I guess, like broad overview of the Stark project, and then also kind of meta with it as well, because there's been just some stuff in like the technical videos that I've seen that are really interesting. I think not even just from like an electric standpoint. I just think there's some overall extremely interesting tech that's going into these bikes that could be adapted to any motorcycle, not just electric. So I'm extremely excited that we're doing this.
Well, I'm really glad to hear so, and look forward to tell you a bit more.
So I guess broad, maybe should we just fully start at the top of even some background of, I guess, your background in motorcycling, maybe, because I think to a lot of people, I mean, to me, I got the call from Josh Hill while the bike was still under NDA, and he didn't really give too many details other than we're not going to need gas anymore. And I was like, damn, all right, that's a pretty big claim coming from Hill, you know. And then a couple weeks later, we got on a phone call, and then I think it was a few days later, the bike came out. But I mean, before that, it's like this thing's just like mum's the word. No one knows about it. So you're now, I would say, one of the more prominent figures in the industry in terms of somebody that's like headlining a manufacturer. We don't really get to see the face of a company in motorcycling these days. So yeah, it's kind of just from not knowing who you are to being one of the more interesting people in the industry. So I guess maybe we should even just get a little bit of context as to how you kind of got to this position.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the bike might be interesting. I don't know if I'm so interesting, but thank you very much. I mean, having those words from Josh is so nice. I mean, that's our ambition, to replace gas with electric and to show that electric technology is superior to gas. So to have his impression after coming riding the bike and saying something like that is just fantastic. It's a big, congratulations to the team that has worked so hard behind it to make it happen. But I mean, okay, a bit of my background. Is that what you want to know? Okay, so I mean, I grew up in the countryside of Sweden, surrounded by farms, and there you can either bicycle or ride a motocross or horses. So my family had horses, but that was not really my interest. So I started riding motocross when I was fairly young. I had a Yamaha 80cc with a steel tank. That's I had to get a bit older bike. It was always problems, never really worked, but it was still fun when it worked. And then I had a few different bikes, and just always been riding and enjoying it. And I didn't really have any clear path in life, what to do. So the only interest I had was motorcycles. So I decided to become a motorcycle mechanic, and that's what I did. So when studying to become a motorcycle mechanic, I met Stefan, who had created a company selling motorcycle parts and stuff online, basically, and I started working with him, and then he started to create 24MX, which is the world's largest online motocross store. And he brought in Daniel, and we built the company from nothing, basically, three guys in almost like a garage to the world's largest online motocross store. And of course, it was a huge amount of very good people making sure that happened. And now it's a company with 400 employees and 150 million euro in sales. And that's basically my background, both from interest and also business perspective. But I decided a few years ago I wanted to do something new, and I spent all my life trying to just sell as much stuff as possible. And I'm always out in nature, either riding enduro, mountain biking, running, whatever. And I think the planet we have is amazing. And to just see how we're destroying it every single day, it doesn't feel right. And I've been spending all my efforts just trying to sell more shit, and not necessarily shit, but just this commercial spiral that is constantly destroying the planet. And I felt that if you're gonna spend all your energy doing something, why not trying to do something good instead? And of course, it also has to be motivating. So in the end, I decided I wanted to build electric motorcycles to try to transform the motorcycle industry to sustainability, focusing on CO2 and plastic reduction. So that's the background I wanted to do together with a partner. So I found Paul, who is our CTO and my co-founder, who has the experience of developing bikes from the ground up, and we created a company together. And I mean, now it's 50 people. I think 40 of those are engineers, basically. So it's an engineering company at the moment that has developed this bike from the ground up. And I mean, it was clear, like when we started the company, we said, let's only do this if we believe we can build an electric motocross bike that can outperform every gas bike in the market. Because the ambition here is to transition the motorcycle industry into sustainability, and I don't think that's going to happen if you sell a compromise. If you develop a product that's a little bit heavier, double the price, slower, ugly, I mean, that's not going to work. If you want to transform the industry, you need to build a sustainable product that's better in every single aspect. So that's the challenge, and that was our goal. And we, after our first analyze, we came to the conclusion it should be possible. And yeah, I think we have done that now, but it was much harder than we expected. And I think that's always the case.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I guess with to look at the Tesla model, I mean, that was definitely I guess something that Tesla was founded on, in a sense. Is it's like, okay, let's build a product that's better, and then it will just kind of force people, because for whatever reason, with human nature, it's sort of like, let's just deny the problem, or let's just kind of skirt our way around the problems of whether it's global warming or just waste in general. And, let's keep burning fossil fuels while they're there. So it's almost like human nature is going to prevent us from ever doing the right thing beforehand. So it's like this almost is a way of kind of backdooring the sustainability question, because it seems like in human nature that's the only way you can actually do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that makes sense. I'm the same. I'm not, I mean, you always want to take the easy route, and you want the nicest experience, you want to go on the nicest trips, you want to buy the nicest stuff, whatever. So I think the only way to really transition to sustainability is building better sustainable products. Yeah. It cannot be a compromise. That's not what we want.
So with to go back to your I guess the origin, so you're pretty much like out of school. Like, what level of schooling did you kind of go through? Like, I guess because there has to be, I guess, an academic mindset here in terms of just wanting to build something, and there's a certain founder mindset that you need to have. And I guess the MX24 thing, like, there's a lot to learn through. I mean, it's not like you have to go to business school. I didn't go to any kind of university, but there's obviously been some kind of, like, there's a founder mindset or like an academic kind of mindset that you've started with and carried through. So it's like you went to school, and then you did the mechanics apprenticeship, and then MX24, or I guess, how did it all kind of flow together?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was 17 when we started 24MX.
Okay.
So I was still in school, actually. So I was, well, I think officially I was having, what's it called? When you're working, but you're not working. But I was working 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And I was in school 1 day a week. So for my last year, I never really spent time in school. I think school can be good, but for me, I learned by doing. And I mean, I learned so much from Daniel and Stefan, because they had so much more experience. I think they were maybe 35 at that point and had, vast experience of, managing companies and creating other companies and so on. So I learned a massive amount of, how to build a company basically from them. And they let me they gave me so much responsibility from the start. So I mean, very much thanks to them. That's also why I think could learn quite quickly. So
Yeah.
I mean, I was a manager. I remember when I was mainly managing our assortment and the commercial aspects, like how we sold products and the products that we, which brands we're working with, setting up those agreements, etc. So when I was 20, I was always doing business with 60-year-old sales managers and company owners, and coming as a 20-year-old, it takes a while to get respected, of course. But so I was very early on, working. I think that's really what taught me how to build a company and so on. Then actually Daniel and Stefan as well, they sent me to a business school, so I was studying in the evening because I think they saw that I was really pushing hard and they wanted to help me develop more, so they paid for something like an MBA, something like this. So I have that as well, but I think I'm not a university guy. I have some points, but it's basically through building 24MX is how I learned how to build a company.
Yeah, and I mean that's I guess for most people that are end up being super successful, that's kind of a story that you'll hear more often than not, is that there was just like this kind of trial by fire. My buddy Sam says, bite off more than you can chew and chew like fuck, and that's sort of like the business ethos that he's always had. And I think you'll find like a lot of people. That's exactly
what we did.
Yeah, they kind of have that sort of strategy in place, but then over time you end up becoming a legitimate businessman in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't give up. I mean, you never fail until you give up, so as long as you keep on going, you will succeed. So yeah, I think that's the mentality it takes, and then you find your way.
And so what,
that's early the background.
Early days, like what did you feel like you brought to the table when you're dealing with these guys that are like a lot older and a lot more experienced in business?
I mean, everyone is so shaped, the mindset of most people, I think, is like really in a box, like, and for me, I had no limitation because no one told me the barrier. So I mean, I several times, let's make this the best selling bag in the world, from nothing, and we did that within that category. Or we had a tent, which is one of those things, as people in Europe have seen, 24MX tent, which is we became the third biggest seller in the world of canopy tents. So the two biggest were Walmart and China Mobile, and then number 3 in the world was 24MX, from the motocross industry. That's just ridiculous. and how did we do that? We wanted to make the motocross tracks look like 24MX tracks. This was the idea behind it. And how do we do that? I mean, you can pay a ridiculous amount of sponsoring, but that's not a sustainable business model. And then we saw that people like to use these tents. And I remember it was Daniel's idea to bring them in from the start. And the first year we sold 1,200 tents. And that was, quite cool because, every tent is 9 square meters, and it's basically just a huge marketing banner, so it looks 1,200 of those. Wow. And then I remember saying that next year we're gonna sell 10,000, and everyone was like, you're an idiot, that's never gonna happen. But that's when you if you set a hard target, then you need to look at how do you achieve that. So okay, if we're gonna sell 10,000, sold 1,200 now, okay, we need to have a better offer, we need a better price to make it more interesting, to increase the conversion. What is the right price? And then working with testing pricing campaigns for such a long time, you kind of get a feeling for how it's gonna hit, the price elasticity model. And okay, if we have that volume, how much can we reduce the cost? So trying to find the balance here. And then I remember that second year we sold 9,500 tents. So we didn't reach a target, but we're pretty close. And then we brought it up every year, just increasing the target. I think the best year we sold almost 100,000 tents.
Wow.
So that's like 900,000 square meters of marketing. And it was profitable. So it was not a marketing cost, it was a profitable business by itself. That's pretty cool. But it was it's a team effort, of course. So we created how are we going to launch this? Like the launch campaign with hundreds of activities and all of that. But it's very much like if you set a target, and then you need to like really dig down into each step of the process. How are you going to achieve that? The tent is very simple in comparison to building a new electric motocross, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, if we want to become the industry leader in motocross, but we're also going to be electric, how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we need to develop a better product. In which way does it have to be better? Well, we need more power, it needs to be lighter, easier to ride, less maintenance, and we also want to make it more beautiful and a few other aspects. And okay, so then you look into how can you achieve that? How do you achieve the low weight? How do you achieve the power, the range? How do you find the right ergonomics? So as long as you just like, that's the same, whatever you do, if you just break it down, everything is easy.
Yeah.
Okay, for step 1, I need to call this guy. Okay, that's not difficult. And then step 2, can I convince him to do this? Okay, that's sometimes possible. If that's not possible, you have to call the next guy.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like I could tell, I guess, just from initially before I spoke to, I can't remember if I spoke to you guys first or saw the video, but maybe I spoke to Ben and then I spoke to you guys after. But I remember seeing the video and being like, fuck, they get it. Like, this is a real company. This is a real launch. This isn't the Stark launch to me didn't feel like something that come from within this industry. It felt like something that come from outside of our industry, and was done on it's hard to say, like, more legitimate in a way, because but that's sort of just how it felt in a way, because like you said, the box, like a lot of people in this industry are in a box, and you'll see these like incremental gains year on year to motorcycles. There's not a lot of risk, there's not a lot of like crazy progression. It's sort of just a very like just every year it's just like these tiny little kind of 1%ers. The marketing doesn't change, the messaging does, like nothing kind of changed. So I guess hearing this story from you, and like that's why I'm interested in a little bit of the background, because for me, in terms of, I guess if I have to think about the kind of person or people that would be behind a brand that launched in the way that you guys did, I see a lot of this kind of like outside the box thinking and just a completely different approach to sort of what we've seen. And I guess when you were in MX24 and that process of learning, were you looking at the industry and kind of seeing these kind of holes in the industry where it was like, man, I really feel like I could do this just better across the board?
Yeah, if you look at whatever you look at, you can always find ways to make it better. That's normally not so difficult. So if you say, you take a specific category, now we're very focused on sales, but if for instance, we had one of these things was, okay, so we're selling motocross gear. How do we make people buy motocross gear from us instead of someone else? Okay, that's an important question. Well, one of the things to make it more likely is if they have all their gear inside a 24MX gear bag, next time they need to buy something, they should at least have us as one of the options on their mind.
Yeah.
So let's make the best gear bag at very like a good price, and so we created the best-selling gear bag in the world for motocross. But it's 24MX and Stark is very different from that way. Like 24MX is very much volume driven and very much price driven, whereas with Stark is also, it's a nicer challenge to try to be more focused on technology and making a more premium product. It's a different type of challenge, and I think for me it's more inspiring. But it was a great journey and learning experience to do 24MX for sure.
So did you just have, I guess growing up, did you have a natural propensity towards wanting to build and engineer things? Like, was that sort of something that, because that's a pretty hard itch to scratch when you're a kid and you don't have capital or resources to kind of build things. But I'm sure that, or maybe there is like this, I guess, just like a feeling for a long time to want to build something. Because I mean, I know from my personal experience, like my career before the podcast was making videos for other companies, and it was cool, and I did some amazing stuff, and I did like crazy things that you could never do otherwise. But there is such a greater sense of fulfillment in like building my own brand and having my own conversations and my own, like, everything in this process, like, I get to kind of own. I feel like I'm actually building something more tangible for me. So I guess is that something that has kind of always been something inside you to sort of want to put something out into the world that's of your own making in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I could never afford the things I wanted as a child, you know. So I wanted a motocross, and I was begging for so many years, and then when I got one, you know, it was so old it didn't work, but you know, it's still fun. So I probably felt that I couldn't do everything that I wanted to do, but yeah, I've been rebuilding bikes and cars and so on since I was maybe 12. I mean, starting with mopeds and you know, how can you make it go faster. I was always very interested, like tearing down the motor, understanding how it works and what you can do to improve it. So I was always doing that since very early stages, and I think it's the best way to learn. You know, if you want to understand how something works, tear it apart and put it back together again, and then, you know, if you make it work, you have to
understand
figure
how
out how it's working. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, so I've always been doing that. I spent, you know, every evening in the garage as a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So when did you when does the Stark project in your mind, like, when's the first kind of flame that starts kind of burning? Because when, you know, we're sitting talking about a model that people have put a deposit on, but it's definitely goes, I'm sure it goes years back into the, you know, the origin of like, okay, this is something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for how long, but I've been thinking about it for many years. Like, the future must be electric, because, you know, you don't need gears, you don't need clutch, you have a completely you know, controllable power. The noise issue is not there. The maintenance is goes down drastically. I mean, I was always dreaming that it should be more fun to ride, you know, because it should be easier. Because, I mean, I think a lot of skilled riders, maybe they don't think so much about changing gears and the clutch and these kind of things. But as an amateur rider, I like riding, but I'm average. Yes, I'm always in the wrong gear. Always struggling, you know, to get all of these things to synchronize, because riding a motocross is really synchronizing 10 different things at the same time. Yeah. And that's extremely difficult. So if you take away 3, it becomes significantly easier to ride. It's, you know, very obvious. And I think traditionally bikes have prioritized a good clutch feel on the left side of the handlebar. So, you know, with your fingers in your hand, you can really control the clutch very well. You could never, it would be very difficult to do that with your feet, right? To have, So they put the foot brake. They made a foot brake, you know, because there was no space for a handbrake, basically, and that creates a huge amount of limitations in terms of how you can use the foot brake. I mean, a lot of the good riders, they're very capable, of course, of using foot brake, but as an amateur rider, I think it's very difficult, and it's several things. One is like exactly the right pressure on the brake pedal with a thick motocross boot. That's very difficult to sense. But also how you put pressure on the foot pegs. I mean, you need to adapt your foot so that you can brake. So it is also going to limit your foot and weight positioning on the foot peg. Because you have to brake. So if you can remove that, it also makes it easier. I mean, it's obvious with a bicycle, you know. No, I've been dreaming about that for many years, what you could do with an electric bike. And then I think Alta did an amazing job with the Redshift that they built, and it's a really cool bike. But unfortunately, it didn't succeed. So, I mean, I think that's when that didn't really go through, like when they went bankrupt. or yeah, I think that's what happened. It felt like, okay, who is gonna do this instead? And it wasn't obvious for me, but it took some time. And then I had decided already to leave my previous company. I wanted to do something new.
Yeah.
And I wanted to work with sustainability. And since it didn't feel like anyone, but according to me, doing it in the right way with electric motorcycles, okay, why? Let's give it a shot. Let's see what's possible.
And so
I couldn't really resist. Like all that.
Oh no, sorry, keep going. No.
No, I mean, I remember like the first feeling is like, it's stupid. Trying to build a vehicle manufacturer is too difficult. But at the same time, it's so appealing. I couldn't resist, so always kept on pushing. And I remember always telling my friends, like, I'm looking into this, but it's I'm never going to do it because, it's too unlikely to succeed. But then I kept on working on it, and okay, here we are. Okay, now it's going to succeed. Because if you just continue. And I couldn't resist because it was too fun.
And so I think one of the things that people think, right? So if you're a person that sees this launch and then you're got like, all right, there's this pre-sale kind of thing and you can put your $100 down and you can get in line for the bike essentially. There's definitely like the counter side of the conversation is, oh yeah, this is just a money grab and people can, like, let's see if this thing actually ever comes out and let's see if it actually blah, blah, blah. But essentially, like, you kind of were involved in a very, very successful company that you, I guess, like sold out of or got like paid out of. So there is a level of like financial independence on your end to where like that conversation probably shouldn't be that loud in people's mind, I guess, because I mean obviously it's very expensive to start a manufacturing company and then you've got partners involved, so not sure how it works, but it's not like you've built a website and a prototype and you're using, because I think it was, you said like 5,000 units in the first 6 weeks. I mean, is that like 500,000 worth of capital raised from that? So it's not like you would have raised the capital to build all of these motorcycles. So I guess just like to talk about the money landscape, like this is actually a company, like you guys have some real backing to where it's not like you're relying on those pre-sales to build the motorcycles kind of thing.
No. I mean, so before we launched, our ambition was to sell 5,000 bikes the first year. And everyone, involved was like 5,000. That's a big target,
Same as a
lot of
tent.
bikes. You think you can do that? Exactly. But I also felt like, wow, 5,000. It's probably going to be, it's a big volume. But then we launched, and it was just crazy. I mean, the amount of interest that we received. So in the first 24 hours, the site was live 6 because it just kept on crashing, which is, of course, extremely annoying. But, it was just too much interest. And still, within those 6 hours, we sold 800 bikes. So as soon as the web went live, we sold 2 bikes every minute. Well, so okay, there's a lot of people that want to have this bike. That's obvious.
Yeah.
And that was then we really started understanding, okay, this is going to be much bigger than we thought. And within the first 6 weeks we sold, I think it was 5,000. And we had been building production lines, so we had 2 different factories now, one for the battery, one for the bike, and they're almost finished. So the bike assembly line is being tested right now as we speak. But this is prepared for building 5,000 bikes per year. We can probably push through several shifts to 1,200 bikes per month, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
So right now we're planning a new factory. So we're gonna start production with these production lines, and then now we're planning a new factory. So we're investing much more money than we expected, but that's fine. There's a lot of, the individuals that are behind this company have made a lot of money in the past, and we have decided to invest it into building Stark.
Yeah.
So Now we are building a factory that should have a production capacity of 150,000 bikes per year.
Yeah, that's insane.
So that's
a big number.
It's insane. But it's a big number, and you can ask yourself, okay, how do you do that? That's not so easy. But our strategy is very much based upon the team that we have. So we're trying to build a super team.
Yeah.
And that's really one of my learnings is, to have the best people makes a tremendous difference when you want to create something. So we have been very, very focused on finding the best people, both within, how do you engineer a motorcycle? How do you engineer the electronics? We have some really, really great electronic engineers from Zagreb in Croatia. And, how do you build the best production line? So our CEO and production manager, they both have great experience from the motorcycle industry and built several factories in the past.
Yeah.
For big motorcycle companies like Piaggio with these kind of volumes. So it's not just a group of guys that are seeing what they can do. It's a super capable team that has done this before, and now we're just slightly pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, and I think that was when I had spoke to you and Ben that first time, because I think that's always the impression, and I think especially in motocross, is there's so many companies that come and go, and especially people from like outside the industry. You get like a Joe Gibbs Racing or like Alta, that they come and then they go. It's just a tough gig. Like you're selling quite a niche product in terms of like all of the factors that we described before, like noise and mechanics, and so I think that people are skeptical within this industry in particular, but it was just something that I guess I found pretty clear when I spoke to you guys the first time. I was like, oh, that's not what this seems like to me. So I figured that was probably just like a good conversation to have, to kind of like give people a little bit more of that background,
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that I guess that's like the big question that people would mostly have is like, okay, like just the scaling side of it. But so with that extra scale, in terms of the orders, what does that allow you guys to do? Like, I guess that would present some challenges, but that I'm sure would also present some opportunities as well, right?
With the scaling the production?
Well, with the fact that you guys got so many more orders than you thought so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, so our ambition is to build premium motorcycles. So it's not only about volume, of course, that's separated. Yeah. But then, our ambition is to transform the motorcycle industry to sustainability. So how do you do that? Well, the higher share of the people that buy a sustainable product, okay, then you're succeeding more. So I think that's the biggest win. That's getting a higher share of electric out there is very nice. And what's there, that's causing many different things. So we were talking to the British Federation last week.
Yeah.
And how can we incorporate electric into the current racing in the nationals in England? And when they realized, the volume of orders that we have in UK right now, they said, I think this was Thursday, they said, okay, we will redraw the regulations this weekend, and they should be changed within 2 weeks. So, I mean, that would not have happened if we sold 20 bikes.
Yeah.
In UK. But now, like, everyone is realizing that, okay, this is transitioning very, very fast. So we have to make this a reality. So I mean, there are several things. One of the benefits with higher volume that we're looking into is Stark superchargers.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, today we have a range that we think is similar to full tank of gas on a 450. It depends on how you ride, of course, and so on. But we believe it's going to be very beneficial if you can charge your bike at the track, quite quickly. So we're looking into, tracks all around the world where we could install Stark superchargers.
Yeah.
So you could go there and just plug in your bike, and I mean, it depends. If you're doing 2 heats in a race, probably you should charge. You need to charge in between. So I mean, that would not be possible without the volume. So now we're looking into, you know, which areas in the world do we have most amount of customers right now, and then we're talking to these tracks to see, you know, what's possible. And I think we will probably, very likely that we will build Stark superchargers. So it's early on right now, but that is made possible by the volume, of course.
Yeah. Where were the most orders come from, out of curiosity?
US. By
Yeah,
far.
okay. Yeah, right. Is there a particular, like, I guess, regions of the country where, because it does speak to, I guess, like economics and like socioeconomics in a way, like where people are buying these bikes, like especially in the US, like it's quite a, I guess it's charged in that sense, you know, so it'd be interesting to understand the breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, well, that we can talk about that for hours, but I think the biggest area for us is California, but it's all over US. I mean, East Coast, West Coast, there are orders from everywhere, basically. But I think it's the areas where people ride the most.
Yeah,
it seems it's not because the bike is maybe 10% more expensive than the 450s now. So it's not really. We're trying to not make it too expensive. It should be obtainable. Yeah, you know, for everyone that can buy a new bike.
It's I was watching a bunch of the videos again before I come in here, and like just the triple clamps, like just to speak on the price point. So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, dude, this bike is ridiculous. Like the triple clamps are aftermarket triple clamps essentially, and you guys are running the same kind of split clamps that like the factory WP forks are running, and then there's the custom foot pegs that you guys have built, and then there's the axle block sliders that have clicks in them instead of, you know, like just guessing and measuring. It's just, even, I guess to speak on the price, like it is crazy that like you guys have made this bike for the price that you have, and this is just the initial offering. And I mean, I think with all of these kind of companies, there is an economy of scale to a point where, you know, things get cheaper. Like you can buy the raw materials of the bike for X amount, but then I guess you have to work backwards from there in terms of the labor and the marketing, and then, you know, like you kind of add the costs in from there. But the more that you build, the cheaper that you can make the units over time.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So I mean, it's a difficult choice. I mean, you can see some of the OEMs where, you know, you have like a casted top triple clamp, then you have a forged bottom one, and I mean, just from like a design perspective, it hurts. It hurts to see, like, it doesn't even match. Like the surface is so different. It's ugly. You know what? The difference, if you would just forge both, it would cost you $1 more in production.
Yeah, right.
Why can't you do that? So we're looking into different ways, and you know, sometimes you can make a product much better with a quite small difference in investment.
Yeah.
Then of course, having fully machined, you know, triple clamps in 7075 T6, that is quite expensive, but it's something that makes quite a big difference on the performance of the bike. So we thought, okay, it's worth it. We will invest some money here to have better performance. And then of course in the chain adjuster, you know, it's costing a little bit more. You know, just have this bolt with a nut that you're used to with the 2 wrenches. It's a super cheap solution, but it's a shit solution. I mean, as a motorcycle mechanic, every time in my life I have adjusted chains, I've been swearing about this. Why the fuck do I have to do this? There must be a better way to do it. So it was the same for us. I remember when we had the conversation, okay, we have to make the chain adjusters now. What are we going to do? We couldn't make normal chain adjusters. We had to do something better. It would feel couldn't sleep on that. We have to make it better. And foot pegs we could have just used some existing foot pegs.
That's worse than chain adjusters. On the stock, like as bikes now, that's the job I hate the most, is putting new foot pegs on a bike. I think that is the worst job in motorcycling. So to see that the way that those go in, that to me is a huge win.
Oh, the clip.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the clip there?
Oh, worst part.
Oh yeah, that's so annoying. Yeah. Yeah. Every time you bleed, you slip with your fingers and you. Yeah, no, I mean. That pin is ridiculous. So I think these are just things that have been inherited over so many years.
Yeah.
And no one is questioning why. And we care so much. We cannot, this is our baby. We cannot, give our baby out there with a solution that we hate. We have, if we can do it better, we do that. But then I think sometimes, we have to balance it, but we're really, really bad in that normally. So we, for instance, we finished all of the bodywork of the bike 1.5 years ago, basically. And I mean, we had two designers in Barcelona working full time on that. And when it was done, it was. Like we had some GP guys there, and like they liked the ergonomics, and it was looking good, but it was not really perfect. So in the end, we decided to. Okay, we have to redo it. So I think we spent basically 2 guys working, full 70 weeks plus some well of course a lot of other engineering resources to redo it. So we developed all the bodywork 2 times.
Wow.
Which was unnecessary, of course. But because like it's so difficult, if like we could make this better.
Yeah, it's such a
we have to
that's such a dope mindset, and I think that like it just comes across in the product too.
Thank you.
So
that's what we're trying to achieve. But
so with you said before, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a lot. Like it's just pretty much everything is interesting to me with this bike and the project and the whole deal. So, but you said before that you have a conversation with someone, and that's the first thing, I need to call this guy. So when you're in this, you've got this idea in your head for this electric motocross bike. You can see it in your mind's eye. You've got your own 3D rendering in your mind of what you think this thing looks like, and you've felt the feelings of riding it for the first time in your mind. What is the first 5 to 10 phone calls that you have to make to start to even piece this puzzle together?
That's a really nice question. I mean, so the first was to find Paul, of course, our CTO and my co-founder, because if you want to build a bike that's better than others, you need engineers that have built these kind of bikes before, because that experience, you need it. And so I met a few different people, and I think when me and Paul met, we both just felt, we had similar ideas of how we would like to do it. He's also he's mostly a hard enduro rider, but very passionate, super passionate about motocross and enduro. And it felt right. So that was, of course, one of the first phone calls. We also involved a very famous motorcycle engineer called Tony Foal, who has written several books about motorcycle dynamics and chassis.
Really?
Has been involved in... he has developed a software. I think it's used by many of the MotoGP teams. I don't know if that's still the case, but it has, at least in the past. I mean, basically every MotoGP team has been using his software for calculating chassis flex and stuff like that. So that's one of the things, because if you want to build a better bike, first of all, you need to analyze the competition. What is the right flex of the chassis? What is the right center of gravity? What is the right squat angle? And these kind of things. So of course, Paul has a lot of experience with that, but Tony Foal, I mean, he's a legend. I mean, he's maybe the motorcycle chassis guru. I mean, so, and he was very passionate. He liked the idea, so he has been helping us quite a bit. And so that was one of the early phone calls. Then, of course, the electronics, finding people that has the experience of building, the highest level power electronics in the world. And I think we were fortunate to find the team in Zagreb that has joined us in this journey. And that was one of the early calls. And then I guess that's the first ones.
And so you basically leave MX24 or 24MX, and then do you just go full time into this from, I guess, because there's got to be like a commitment point where it's like, okay, I'm doing this thing. What you've done doesn't come to life unless you're pretty much all in, I'm assuming. So you pretty much like, there's just a day where you decide like, all right, this is how it's going down. And then you kind of make those initial phone calls and then bang from there. Like you're the CEO of this company that's largely still just a figment of your imagination with some kind of tangible people that are now working on it. But I guess how long is that process from making those initial phone calls to a launch video that goes on YouTube and across social media and press releases?
Yeah, I mean, when I had my last date defined in 24MX, it was really, really scary for me because I always been working. I never really had any long vacation since I was 17. So I was afraid, what's going to happen if I have nothing to do. So I think I started 5 companies, actually, when I left, which was ridiculous, of course, because at that point I wasn't sure if Stark was going to succeed.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it was more of an idea at that point, and so I started a real estate company, an e-commerce 2 different e-commerce companies, and some other things. And actually, a lot of those went well. But I'm only a passive owner in those now. I created an e-commerce company with a friend of mine, David, who he took over that completely. So I'm not involved anymore. And I was quite early on 100% focused on Stark. But the first day, I think I started. I think it was 5 companies, yeah. So it was a bit crazy. But I was very afraid of, I cannot have nothing to do. I'll go crazy, I need to. Because also when you start it, it's difficult to work 12 hours a day on it because you don't know what to do. Moves slower. Yeah. Yeah, and you're waiting on few people. So you have this dead time, and then, when you have a few hours, okay, let's do this, so that's what happened. I don't know if that was so smart, but that's what I did.
Well, I think I mean, I can definitely relate to that in the sense of, I remember when I sort of started doing the podcast, I just committed to it. I was like, I'm just going to do this, and I'm down to be broke for a little while, because I didn't start it with a lot. I'd come back from America or whatever, and wasn't ideal circumstances. But I was like, no, I'll just do this, and that's it, and I'll commit to only this, and I think it could be a good thing. But in the early days of starting any business, there's like pockets of time that you can work on something, and then it's like you might get 3 hours and you've typed all the emails that you could type, you've done all the editing that you could, like, it just hasn't got that momentum yet, whereas nowadays I could work for 24 hours a day and still not finish my work. And I'm sure that that's the position that you've been in for a while with Stark. But so I guess how long did that ball take to get rolling, and when did it start to kind of gather momentum and that kind of thing?
I mean, it hasn't been that long. I mean, maybe 2.5 years.
Really?
A bit less. Yeah.
That seems like such a short amount of time to turn around the product that you guys have.
Yeah, it is. It is very short, actually. But I think it's very much based upon that we we found the right people within each area, and we have invested a lot to do it. So we've not had 5 guys working on it. We have 40 engineers working on it full time. I think that's the difference. And also, with the experience in all the different areas, if that's engineering, design, business, whatever, if you have done it before, you go straight to the point. You don't need to spend time figuring out where to go. You know exactly where to go. And also for us, with the manufacturing suppliers we work with, we know them from the past.
Yeah.
Because we've worked with them for many years, so we can call them immediately. The swing arm manufacturer, the motor case casting company, and so on. We know these guys, so it's faster from that perspective as well.
So to build the prototype, so you guys are working on your own production line now, and your own factories. There'll be a separate chassis, like motorcycle production line, and then an engine production line. So to get this prototype built, it was all outsourced initially to get like the initial working models done.
We have been doing all the engineering in-house and all the design in-house. But when it comes to producing the prototype parts, that's done externally. So you have a CNC workshop that is machining the component according to your drawings, or 3D printing the plastics according to our drawings. That's done externally.
So you said before that when Alta failed, you kind of asked why. So I guess there's 2 ways that you could look at that particular situation. One person could look at it and say, oh, well, that's a sign that there isn't an interest in electric bikes. It's not viable. You could basically just pick all the negatives out of it. But it seems like you actually looked at Alta leaving as an opportunity rather than a negative. Is that sort of fair to say?
Yeah, I think there are many companies that have proved that electric technology is possible. Of course, Tesla is a huge inspiration, but Alta also proved that you could build a capable bike.
Yeah.
And you can have a theory, but they were the first ones to prove it was possible. And then I think, there were several things that I think could be done even better, both from a product perspective, but also how, they worked commercially. Of course, I don't know exactly. I haven't been in the company, but just from what you can see from the outside, that seems to be a lot of interest. And I just think you need to go big. You cannot produce, 5 bikes per day. That's not possible. You need to think large scale production. You need to think, global sales. I think it was clear. For me, it's very, very clear that electric is the future. The question is only when it's going to take over. And if you can launch an electric vehicle in a category where there is no competition, and it's better than gas, it's going to succeed. You can only fail for internal reasons. That if you fail in sales, is not because of interest. For sure there will be interest. There's interest in every vehicle category. You can fail in the marketing if you do a really bad job in showing your product, but we just need to show it. It's not so we're not selling t-shirts. That's much more difficult. We have an interesting product, so we just need to show that. And then you can say fail in production, but we have built a team of people who knows how to build motorcycle factories. So if someone has built several motorcycle factories before successfully, it's a quite high chance that they can do that again.
Yeah. And so from the outside, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on why you think Alta did fail, because from all accounts they definitely, like, the second iteration of the Red Hawk was a much better motorcycle than the first one. But what are your thoughts around that?
I don't think they failed because the product wasn't good enough. I think the product could have been made better. Every product can, of course, but it was good enough, I think, for the market to I mean, you can see that from the Alta owners today that you speak to. I mean, everyone I talk to are super happy with the bike. Then, everyone has ideas how we can make it even better, make it a little bit lighter, more range, the weight distribution, things like that. But I think they failed for business reasons. That is what I would assume. Of course, they had this deal with Harley Davidson. I don't know the specifics, but it seems they didn't. There was a plan that didn't go through. I don't know exactly what the plan was and what didn't go through. It's hard to say why. Harley Davidson had a focus to build electric bikes. They went with Livewire instead, which hasn't really succeeded. I mean, they're not really succeeding with that, commercially at least. Yeah, and then they failed to raise capital, and they failed. I think if they could have scaled production faster, I don't know. You could also, maybe that was not possible because of their financial situation. I don't know, but they seem to, and maybe they weren't. I don't know how good they were in sourcing. Because that's also one aspect. The product was rather expensive, and obviously they were losing money since they went bankrupt. But if you don't make a company profitable, it will fail. You have to make it profitable. The question is only when. So maybe they had challenges in sourcing, in production, and financials. But it's very hard from the outside to say exactly what happened there. I mean. I'm sure the guys that were there knows much better. I mean, I've been speaking to a few people that were there that seem to be really, really good people. So, but yeah, it seems to be more business reasons why it failed.
Yeah, and that would make sense because, I mean, everybody that I know that's either got one or spent time on one did say how good they were. But I think that was probably the most striking thing from when I spoke to Josh after he was in Spain with you guys, is that he's owned the Alta motorcycles, and he's really been the pioneer of, like, being the best guy in the world to ride those bikes and kind of show what they're capable of. And then that conversation that I had with him, like, that he's not a guy that would bullshit me. Like, we're just generally friends, and he said how much better that bike was. I think that was one of the big things for me with this project. But yeah, it's not like Alta made a bad motorcycle. Like, Hill already liked it and was pumped on it. So yeah, it would make sense that it was more like a commercial thing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you need to do everything right. That's the hard thing.
Yeah. So what, I guess, in the current situation with Stark now, I guess, what are the biggest challenges in, obviously every business just has the standard challenges that it faces, but in terms of what you guys are trying to pull off in building the best electric motorcycle, what are the main kind of sticking points where, like, you guys really have to work hard to kind of overcome those challenges?
So, I mean, now getting to production is for sure the biggest challenge. So the production lines are very far ahead. I think that's not going to be... We have challenges there, but it feels like they are not very much on top of them. Getting all the components in time is a massive challenge. So, I mean, we have hundreds, obviously, thousands of components in the bike. And if we don't get the rear shaft or, one bolt, we cannot assemble the bike. So the supply chain and the distribution of getting all the components in time is an incredible challenge. It's very difficult, and you're relying on many different manufacturers that are very, very professional, but if one is late, the production is late. So I think that is our biggest challenge, without a doubt. And we're pushing very hard for it. We have a good team here as well, but I think there's a very high risk of being late in production, which we are assuming. We're assuming we're going to be late, because if we don't, we risk the company. So you need to hope for the best, plan for the worst. And I don't think we will be so late, but we will probably be a little bit late, as it looks like. But going into production is an incredible challenge. It's super, super hard.
Yeah, 100%. And I think any early company that in this space, I mean, obviously Tesla had their issues with it from the start. Like, it's just, I think it's kind of the nature of the beast, right? Like, there's so many, like literally hundreds of variables in every single product, and so many steps and so many places that it can go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, one of the toolings gets fucked up, and it could take a few months to make a new one. But it's a challenge that every manufacturer faces. It's just it's harder the first time. That's sure. But I think it's gonna be fine. I think it feels like we are the team is working incredibly hard on it right now. I think the way everyone is committed to the company now. I mean, people are pushing incredibly hard, working over hours, working weekends, and really taking this personally to do the absolute best that they can. It's amazing to be in that experience too, to be inside that team and to see how everyone is pushing as hard as they possibly can. So it's very tough, but it's also a nice experience.
Yeah, I can imagine that there would be a crazy vibe. Like, it's not very often that you guys, like anyone in general, would get to be like this in the thick of doing something that nobody's ever done before. And I mean, it might sound hyperbolic to some people, but I mean, for me, this is like such an exciting thing to happen to two-wheeled sport that, or just like any form of two-wheel anything. It's just, this is such a crazy time to be living through something like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much is going to happen in the coming years, and this is the start of I think changing our industry to something better. I think it's going to expand the motocross industry. It's going to make the sport bigger. It's going to help the sport, where you can bring tracks closer to societies. If you just compare it to other sports, you have football fields in the middle of communities, tennis courts, whatever. And motocross is always pushed out. It's out in nowhere. You have to spend at least an hour in the car just to get to the track. And the reason is the noise. So, if we make... But it's also other limitations, which, you need to be a mechanic to have a bike. If you cannot change oil, filters, just valves, stuff like that, it's very difficult to own a motocross bike. So when we bring down the service level to the same as a bicycle, it also enters up, because there are so many people that love adrenaline sports. If that's skiing, bicycling, downhill, whatever, this is just the next level. I think motocross is probably the toughest sport in the world, and it's if you want adrenaline, I don't know what's better. It's very hard to find something. So I think there's a lot of people that would enjoy that if you make it more accessible for people in terms of availability of tracks, and ease of ownership.
I think there's a pretty, I think you're right. Like, there's going to be some kind of unforeseen stuff as well that kind of happens in the industry, and I reference a lot to mountain biking and what e-bikes did for mountain biking, because I mean, this, I don't know if it sounds bad, like, I'm sorry, but it's such a redneck sport. Like, motocross is just the most redneck sport, and I mean, God bless it for that too. But it's because of what you said. Like, you go to any track, it's in the middle of fucking nowhere, and then the people that are running the tracks are from the middle of nowhere. That it's just like you just get a middle of nowhere service at our sport. And you know, imagine having I guess to go back to the mountain bike reference, they start governments all over the world have started building these mountain bike parks at ski resorts, and in the winter they run the hills with the snow, obviously, and then in the summer they convert it to this mountain bike park. You've got 5-star resort accommodation, you've got different levels for all these kids, and you're actually creating the same vibe, like people that doctors and lawyers and accountants and all of these people that are going on these expensive ski trips because of the amenities and the facilities, and you're getting this kind of different demographic into the industry, and they're the people that kind of fund the industry. Like, they're the people with the cash, they're the people that'll buy a $20,000 S-Work Specialized, and you know, and it sort of has always felt to me that motocross isn't appealing to those guys, and you can see it all through Australia now. Any of these big mountain bike parks, my uncle's actually a guy that builds these big trail networks for the government, and I've been there from day one. Cool. And you just see the people that are riding bikes at day one, and then when these big projects are finished, and the money that these people can bring into the industry, because they're not just the people that live out in the middle of nowhere and are scrounging together to buy an old piece of shit 80 that, you know, barely runs. It's like that you can actually bring in this like whole new level of money into the industry, and then that gets like spent within the industry. So I think that there's so many levels at which moving towards an electric model and a more sustainable model, I just think that there's I guess just unintended consequences that I think are going to be better by proxy.
Yeah, I really agree with you. I think also for racing, you know, first of all, of course, I'm a bit biased here, but think about the first time that you have an electric bike lining up with the best 450 riders in the world on the same starting gate. I mean, that's so exciting just to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very exciting feeling, but also the next step of that is, you know, bringing in bigger sponsors to the sport. You know, the big mobile companies, etc., they are not sponsoring motocross today because it's a dirty sport.
Yeah.
But if we accept sustainability, if we bring that into the sport, you're also going to have a completely different type of, you know, sponsors entering and so on, which, you know, can bring the sport up in the racing to the next level as well.
So I guess to touch on the racing bit, because there's probably pretty a deep hole that we could go into here. I think the racing, that's going to be your biggest battle, because of all the videos, like we've posted some good videos on this shit that's got a lot of views and a lot of comments, and there is a lot of people that are like, if I fucking go to a track and there's it, like carrying on about like the electric thing and no noise in a stadium. As the CEO of this company, like, what do you think a race looks like with electric bikes? Because that's your biggest battle. I just enjoyed this conversation so much. I mean, I think it's so... I mean, like, the people that, you know, also the haters, you know, they make the discussion more interesting, you know. 100%. So I think it's quite fun to see a lot of these comments. But, I mean, there are many adrenaline sports in the world without engine noise. Mountain biking, downhill, skiing, goes on forever. So I mean, do you need engine noise to have adrenaline sport and have big crowds? No, absolutely not. Soccer doesn't have much noise, and those crowds get pretty wild.
Exactly, and you know, the difference is that the players can hear the crowd.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is really bringing in a different dimension for them, because, you know, a motocross rider, he can't hear shit because the motor is hauling so loud. You know, you can, if you hear the next rider to you, I mean, normally you can't even hear that. You only hear yourself because, you know, it's so loud. Maybe you can hear the guy in front of you. So I think without the noise aspect, okay, first of all, okay, from racing perspective, you can race in places that never were possible before. So you can bring in racing too, and also without the fumes. I mean, that's normally a problem with indoor space, that the fumes gets ridiculous. So you can race in more arenas and more places. That's good. Without the noise, how's the racing going to be like? I think the crowd is going to be louder. You're going to hear them even more. The riders are going to hear each other, which is also interesting. So now I think people are sometimes screaming at each other, but normally you can't hear them. You can't hear a guy behind you trying to pass, but now you will hear him. You will hear him screaming at you, move over, or whatever. And I think that's going to make it more interesting. The riders, as they go by a turn, they will hear the crowd standing in that turn shouting at them. In a good or bad way, which I think is going to make it more interesting. And I mean, I think the noise for me, I think the start is really like quite powerful, with a bunch of 450s, heading off full throttle. But once the start is done, when you're in a stadium or at the track for more than 1 hour with that noise, it's exhausting. You can't speak. It makes you tired. So for me, I think it's only going to make it better. But we're going to have a 10-year period perhaps where we have both.
Yeah.
So we're still going to have, at the highest level, we're going to have gas versus electric. So we're still going to have the noise, but we're going to have the incredibly interesting variable of gas versus electric.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to make racing so much more interesting. But then, maybe 10, 15 years from now, probably it's going to be all electric, I would assume.
And so to talk about, like, let's just fast forward to the day a Stark Varg lines up at Anaheim 1 with a top 450 rider on that bike. What's the pathway to get to that, and what does that look like for you guys? Will you be fielding a factory team? Like, is there, do you have a pathway to racing that is in your mind right now?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, so we're talking to a lot of the federations globally right now. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. So France has already changed the rules, so we can compete on a national level in France right now.
Yeah.
Italy is giving us a wild card this year. Most likely, they're saying they will change the rules for next year. England is changing the rules now, like within the next couple of weeks, so we can race there. We're talking to FIM, so I think they will change rules. Maybe not for next year, but perhaps the year after. That's not confirmed, but that's what I believe. We're talking to the AMA and Feld as well. Maybe 2 years, I would guess as well. I mean, it's also, these are huge corporations that have a big responsibility in CSR. So, how can you not? You have this issue today, that you're not sustainable, and it's a problem. And here you have an opportunity to test sustainability, and most likely it's just going to bring interest. If it doesn't work, it's not going to work out. But how could you say no to that in today's society? I can't see that happening. So I think within 2 years we're going to see racing at the highest level, and meanwhile we're gonna have some national championships. Sweden is also changing the rules as well. I don't know where we are in Australia. I think, actually for Australia, Jeff Lace, you had him on the podcast a few months ago. He has joined as a general manager for Australia. So
wow,
very excited to have him on board.
That is epic. Yeah. He is such fantastic. A good guy.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's it's part of our super team.
Yeah, you guys could not have picked a better person. Yeah, okay, that's so good.
Thank you. I'm really, really glad to have Jeff on the team. He's fantastic, and I think he's getting started now to talk to the Australian Federation as well as to the dealers to build our presence in Australia and New Zealand as well. So it's a quite clear path to racing, and we're also going to attend some special races, of course, maybe a Red Bull straight rhythm and things like that. So yeah, it's gonna happen pretty fast. We might attend some kind of world championship race some way. We will see. Then, yeah, no, it's gonna happen. It's gonna start in some areas and it's gonna grow. And I think we'll see when we see it in MXGP and the AMA Supercross. But I think within 2 years we're gonna see it.
That's pretty exciting.
Exciting.
And so how the bike has 80 horsepower. That's the peak number. How does it fit into racing in terms of, like, what have you got to do to this bike? Like, is it unfair to race it against 450s if you're going to enter it into the 250 class? Is there some kind of like restriction? Because essentially it's like you guys have the keys to the thing. So the FIM comes to you and says, hey, it needs to be this many horsepower, or it needs to have this much output. And you guys are like, cool, we can do that. But then essentially you're the ones making it like you can do whatever. So what's that conversation look like of how do you actually make this thing compete fairly against those motorcycles?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, of course. I mean, if you want to control a 250 to see that it's following the regulations, you need to tear off the cylinder head, and you need to measure the stroke and the diameter of the piston to figure out the CCs. So, I mean, that's, quite a big job for just checking that the bike is legal. You won't do that for every bike every race. You might do it now and then. With electric, you can control so much easier. So we will give access to the federations so that they can access the data wirelessly for each bike, so that they can see exactly how much power you have been using. So they can check after a race what has been your peak power, and they can also check before, of course, but it makes more sense after. So of course we don't have CCs. What we are discussing with the federations now is to set a horsepower limit, which is equivalent to a factory 250 or 450. And I think that's the easiest way. Just same maximum horsepower, and let's see which technology works best.
But I mean, there's kind of an issue there in the sense that the Star Racing Yamaha has more, I'm assuming, peak horsepower than a factory Honda. Like that bike, I mean, you just ride
the 250.
You just ride the stock motorcycle. It's like, oh, this is a way faster motorcycle. So I mean, is it unfair? Like, how do we manage what's fair? Like, because essentially you're bringing a gun to a knife fight. Essentially, if you've got a bike that you could have unlimited power capacity, within reason, obviously. Like a standard 450, let's say like 60, 62 horsepower, and then you guys are coming with 80. So it's like, but doesn't it make sense as a competitor to want to be on a better motorcycle? That's why you would, if you're a privateer lights class rider, you would buy a Yamaha because it's a faster motorcycle stock. So it's like, to just say like, okay, we're just going to have this peak horsepower, it's kind of almost unfair to you guys in a way that's built this more capable motorcycle, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, racing needs to be quite equal to be fun. I mean, if you're way faster, racing will get less interesting. So, of course, we have to, we know every rider that has tested our bike now is faster on the Stark than their 450. Yeah. So that's a good start. But in the end, I mean, with the 250s, for instance, in the 450 it's more like an open class. I mean, I'm not sure you really need more power. I don't think the 450 class is really the challenge here. But the 250 class, you have an advantage for sure. You can see that with the Star Racing in 250, and so everyone has the same limitations. Like 250cc, that's your limitation. If you can get more power out of it, that's great for you. So I think it would make sense to set the same maximum as the fastest 250, because that's what everyone can get, essentially. And then if you look at amateurs, a lot of people won't tune their bike. They will have a stock engine, maybe by a different exhaust, which gives them one more horsepower. But they can they can tune it. They can get factory modifications similar to that done to their motors if they want to. So if they have that ability, I think guys on an electric bike should have that ability as well to have a similar level. But I think that can be fine-tuned over years, and we need to start. And then if we figure out that the Stark is way too fast, but I think that it will be quite it's going to be good racing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you like Josh Hill when he was on here talking about it, he said you'll pretty much whole shot a 450 every time. And it's like if we're in that territory, like if you guys just rock up to A1 in 2 years' time and whole shot every single main event for 17 races, I mean, like that I might sound like an idiot right now to some people listening, but that's potentially the world that we're living in. Like for anyone that's driven a Tesla, that's the world that we're about to live in dirt bikes. So it's like, I mean, I just am envisioning some like crazy shit going down that like everyone in the racing community is going to kind of have to scratch their head and be like, how do we deal with this thing?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that would be fantastic if that happens for Stark. But I think there are so many variables in racing, that will. That can change those scenarios. Of course, you have an advantage with not having gears, and you have, much faster response. You can control the power much better. But this is the advantage of the electric technology. So
yeah, there's
if
so
electric
many
technology
advantages.
is better, eventually, it's gonna win. But if it wins, it's also proving electric is the future. So then the other brands needs to develop electric bikes. It's the same. If someone is developing better suspension. Okay, if you want to continue to compete with these guys, you need to also innovate and build a better suspension. So I think that's what needs to happen. I mean, should we limit technical development because someone is finding a way to make it better? That sounds very strange and very boring.
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's not change anything. Let's just ride same bikes as today for the next 50 years. Let's not improve anything. Why? Why would you do that? Racing is R&D. It's to evolve, to find better ways. If you see some riders finding new ways to ride, suddenly James Stewart starts to scrub. Like, what the fuck did he just do? And then everyone is copying that because it's faster. And it should be the same with the bikes or whatever it is. That's racing.
Are you prepared to be the most hated man in motocross and supercross? Because let's just say you guys come out at I'm just picturing like a 6 meter hole shot at A1 the first time, and just everyone in their stand just throwing beer into the fucking crowd and just carrying on being like, he's ruined everything.
No, I think, if we would be that superior, which, then probably they will change regulations, say that, no, you need to reduce the power a little bit or something like that.
Yeah, no,
then we have to do that.
I'm just picturing the world just being like so mad at you. But I mean, it's like because you would have made a superior product, but it's like, I just hope you know that shit's coming for you when this bike is the best.
But it's a
thing.
bit, but it's a bit like electric cars nowadays. I mean,
yeah,
I saw a commercial. I don't remember. It was for one of like fast, gas cars. But it was like the numbers they were showing was like, why are you showing that anymore? I mean, my Tesla Model 3, which is not a sports car, is way faster. So I mean, becomes irrelevant. And I think that's why we are here. We want to transition this industry to electric, and I think that's going to be better in every aspect. Then of course, a lot of people are always, you have this, curve like early adapters, early majority, late majority, and so on. And there will be people that love new technology. I mean, they're here now for sure. That's why they're ordering a bike. And then you will have haters that want, they want 2 strokes, because that was the 90s. Yeah, it was amazing. But things have to evolve. Some people still have don't use smartphone, but smartphone is better in most aspects. So I think you can't really stop technical development. It's difficult. If something is better, it's gonna win. If it's not better, it's not gonna win. But that's the beauty of it. It's quite pure. You know, if so if something is better, it will.
And so I guess when do you think that there will be like the first race that you guys do? Like I'm sure that it's not going to be. I mean, is there like you guys could rock up and race one of these things like at any point? You guys have Tortelli as a test rider, like he obviously still rips, like because I think that I guess to make a motocross bike first would show that would sort of have to be one of the key intentions. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, racing is super important. It's the best way to prove your capabilities. I mean, competition is always, no matter the sport, the best way to show what's possible. So I think we will attend the first real race this fall.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm excited. And who would Tortelli be, the guy, you think?
Could be, it depends.
All right.
There is a veteran world championship in Hawkstone. Could be that we go there.
That would be pretty sick.
Not decided yet. Yeah, it would be fun.
Fair enough. So
there are a few opportunities.
So what was that the key reason in making a motocross model first? Because I guess motocross is probably the more niche way that you could go in terms of like mass adoption of this product. Like if you wanted to sell the most products possible, then the highest selling bikes in the world are mopeds. They're not motocross bikes. So I guess I'm seeing that you guys probably don't just exclusively want to sell motocross bikes forever. But why was this the kind of launch point for the company?
Yeah, so we want to develop and sell a full range of motorcycles, maybe not mopeds, but let's say from 125cc and up, focused on the premium and performance segment. We started with the motocross because we think it's the most demanding form of motorcycling. So it's the toughest challenge from an engineering perspective. If you can build an electric motocross bike that outperforms all of the gas bikes, I think you can build any other motorcycle, because motocross is such a ridiculous sport. The bike is going through so many, jump 60 meters long, 10 meters high, land, continue riding, and it should be all fine. If motocross didn't exist and you would make up the sport today, people would just think that you're an idiot. No, you can't do that. But you can, because it's transitioned into that, and now it's here. So I think it's the best category to prove your capabilities before developing other bikes. And also it's not road legal. So it's not the same amount of paperwork, which you could easily get stuck in as a start. So it's a safe route from a bureaucracy perspective. Yeah. And it's also the most challenging route from an engineering perspective. So I think it makes sense to prove yourself in motocross and then transition into other categories. Yeah. If we would make a scooter first and then a few years later come with motocross, that would feel strange. I don't know. But if we make a motocross now, we managed to make that the fastest motocross bike in the world, and then we build a number of street bikes in various categories. It's more of a natural path, I think. That it definitely makes sense. And so do you see your Stark funding like a factory team that would race, like a factory AMA supercross team and then a world motocross team? Are those kind of natural progressions in your mind? So we need to have factory teams. Exactly how that's going to happen is too early to say. I think right now we are talking to different teams around the world. So I think we will start off or if not start off, I think we will build it together with partners that has, everything
Existing
in place,
infrastructure,
that is already running. Exactly, because that's just going to be way faster. And it's a bit the same, find the best guys that are doing it today, and then we see if we can do it slightly better together, instead of trying to build it from the ground up, which will take much longer, and not sure it would be better.
And so I guess
we're interested in team partners.
So I guess it's kind of getting a little bit ahead of the cart before the horse kind of thing. But do you think that it would kind of position you guys differently from a commercial standpoint in terms of sponsors? Like you mentioned that earlier, that you think that this could bring in different sponsors. Is that sort of something in your mind as well, that you think that when you do go racing, that you guys will be positioned differently as a result of the product?
Yeah, I think so. We had a very, very large company reaching out to us that wanted to cooperate in racing as a sponsor. So I think it's gonna open up doors that this industry, never seen before.
And so
because it's such an interesting sport.
Yeah, sorry. Continue. Sorry.
I mean, I think Supercross and motocross can grow massively from where it is, and I think there are many larger companies that would be interested in getting involved if there's a sustainability path.
Why do you think that's such a why do you think that's such a big hurdle for companies now? Because I guess just you're immersed in that sustainability landscape, and I just don't think it's not a conversation that's happened at our sport at all. And I mean, it's not a conversation I'm particularly having a lot. So I guess for my own personal education, why do you think that is such an important thing that we have been missing?
Sustainability?
Yeah, and I think that why you think that would entice more companies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the world has an incredible focus on sustainability. So even, in many places in the world, it's a legal requirement to have a CSR business plan. So if you look at the biggest companies in the world, if that's, some of the phone companies, computer manufacturers, they don't want to be associated to something that is, well, this is motorcycling is not neutral. It's bad. It's causing damage to our planet. So they would not take that. Every big corporation in the world, except maybe some oil companies, and even them are focused on sustainability. Every single big corporation in the world has a CSR policy and plan in place, because it's a requirement. And then to take a decision to sponsor something that is negative for the environment, it's very difficult. So that you will only do that if you're inside the industry. So I mean, now a lot of the sponsors, majority of them, are companies from within the industry, because if you're selling motocross gear, okay, of course you're gonna sponsor motocross riders and teams. But if you're building computers, why would you, if you have a very clear policy that you're working towards sustainability, why would you start investing in something that's destroying the planet? That's not going to happen. So I think it has the potential of bringing in much larger capital into the industry if teams move in the sustainability direction.
And so essentially it's I've honestly never thought of this from this perspective. I think from a manufacturer perspective, it makes sense. But in terms of just this being something that's handicapping our entire industry, because it's essentially, as motocross and supercross and racing stands right now, it's we're on a one-way street heading in the wrong direction. So it's we're kind of heading backwards. If sustainability is this direction and we're heading this direction, we're essentially going backwards. And it makes sense that only the companies that are going backwards with us would be investing in this sport.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean it's a shrinking industry. It's well, I don't know, maybe stable slash maybe shrinking a little bit because of that. And I think I don't think we should do sustainability because the world is pressuring the motorcycle industry to do it. That's not our ambition. Our ambition is to bring on a product that's better and more fun, which gives a better experience. And I think that should be the motivation. You know, I don't believe in compromises. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think the way to do it is be better in every single aspect, and that's the challenge, and that's the fun part of it. You know, to make that work.
It's just
if we succeed with that, it's gonna be.
Yes. Oh, sorry. The time difference kind of gets me a little bit. Yeah. So, yeah. Do you think that not just the manufacturing side of the industry, but do you think that all companies within the industry should be moving towards sustainability in that same sort of way? Like, do you think that every category kind of top down can make those moves, or is it? I guess is that just the problem with some of just the technology that we're using in general?
Well, I mean, it's quite clear the path the world is taking. If you're not focused on being part of the future, you're not going to be there. So if you want to continue to do your business or evolve, I would have that focus. And you can see that also, you know, as an example, we are focused on reducing plastic and CO2 pollution. So if you look at plastic pollution, the biggest polluter is the tires, which is made from maybe 70% plastics. But the biggest tire companies today, they are already focused on developing non-plastic tires with, you know, natural materials, because they understand, you know, that's where it's heading, even though the world is not really speaking about this yet. That, you know, plastic pollution is kind of coming up to the surface now a little bit. People are starting to talk about it. You have some Netflix documentaries. No one is talking about plastic pollution from tires, which is, you know, maybe one of the top 3 biggest microplastics producers. I mean, a normal car tire loses 4 kilos during its lifetime before you replace it, and that's 4 kilos of microplastics that people will be breathing. That's gonna go into, you know, the things we grow, whatever. And these companies have already understood it. They are working on it right now, even though the world has not really started asking for it. These are huge companies, of course. I mean, we're talking about the biggest ones. But I think it's the same for all categories, not only tires or powertrains. It's going to be the same for you know, the rest of it. If you have a focus here, it could be that the market is not asking for it right now. But if you become the leader in that category, let's say stickers, you know, there are hundreds or maybe thousands of sticker companies within the motocross industry, and all of them are made of 100% plastic with adhesives that are normally toxic. So I mean, if you would today start developing and you succeed in developing a natural sticker, you know, no one is asking for that today. That's for sure. But if you become the leader here today, once the demand is starting to shift, you know, you're going to be the winner. But that's a long-term strategy. It's not a 1 year, maybe that's a 5-year strategy. Yeah. So, but yeah, I would recommend moving in that direction. You know, the winners are always the ones that are creating the future, not trying to stop it. I mean, look at any industry, you know, car industry, phone industry, music industry. For some reason, a lot of the big corporations are just trying to block the future, but it's not even helping them. You know, they're just bleeding out a little bit slower. So it's I would change that mindset, which is what we're trying to do. I mean, we would like to inspire the big manufacturers to start building electric bikes.
Yeah, I always thought that with tear-offs, like as a young kid racing motocross, and you'd go through these tear-offs, and then some places we went to were on cattle farms, and then they'd have cattle that would like eat the tear-offs, and then the cattle would die. And I was like, even as a young kid, like, why would you not have some kind of biodegradable tear-off that you could use at any track and it's not going to harm, like if there's livestock or wildlife or anything like that. So yeah, you're right. It's just at every level there is just these, there's just these, I guess, technologies that are kind of going backwards instead of forwards.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a great example, the tear-off, which is just crazy. You're ripping off a plastic sheet,
just plastic, just single use,
throwing it. Exactly. And fortunately, I think there are some biodegradable alternatives. But I mean, focus on building the best roll-off in the world, and the problem is solved. And now you have a lot of companies that have developed better roll-offs. I mean, if you look back 5 years ago, there weren't any good roll-off. And now you have 3 or 4 that are pretty good, but it took quite some time. So, but I mean, you could see that 20 years ago. I mean, when we were kids.
Yeah. So
if someone would have got it earlier, I mean, imagine. I mean, even I think Scott was maybe the first one that developed. That was it's called Prospect or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
A bit wider. I mean, they had a huge success with that. But I mean, the one that is first and ride the wave that you create is clear. So I mean, you have that in plastics as well. Like all the plastics are now in polypropylene, which is normal plastic material. That's for sure. It has to be at some point replaced by a biodegradable material. I would be focused on that. If you are producing plastics today, that's. I think all the OEMs are going to move in that direction as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it'll. Yeah,
but
like
we're
you
working
said,
on we're working on that as well.
Oh, so you guys are working on your own, like, I guess not biodegradable, but more like natural plastics.
Yeah, biodegradable.
Yeah,
but not for this first year. I mean, this is for some time in the future. But we want to have same feeling. Obviously, it has to be flexible. It has to be injection molded, but it has to be created from material that's not PP. It has to be biodegradable and non-toxic.
Yeah.
Then we'll see when that happens, but for sure that has to happen.
So I guess to talk a little bit about I guess just where you guys are at, I guess right now, like what would be, I guess, just the message to the probably 100,000 plus people that would listen to this that are interested in like buying a Stark or have bought a Stark? Like, I guess, where's the company at like right now?
Yeah, so we are in late stages of testing. We're optimizing. From here on, it will be mostly focused on software optimizing. The main focus right now is the production to make sure that we can deliver your bike in time. There is a slight risk we will be a little bit late. We will do everything we can to not be late, but I hope we succeed with that. But we might be 1 or 2 months late. That could happen, and I hope people will be okay with that. If that's the case, we are improving the bike a little bit more than what we have communicated. So the final weight will be a little bit lower than what we have said, which is nice. It might be the lightest 450. Well, not the 450. Compared to the 450s, might be the lightest bike in the world, including fuel, if you just assume the others.
Yeah.
And there are 2 surprises coming with the bike that you don't know that you will get, which is nice.
Yeah. Okay. So, so was there? You guys bought all of the motorcycles, all of the current 450s, and then you guys had everything like flex tested, and I'm sure you had Sebastian riding everything and giving the characteristics. Was there anything from an engineering standpoint that stuck out to you as kind of bizarre or weird, or like, why is this still a thing? Was there any like big holes in the motorcycle right now that everyone's riding that you're just go, why is this happening like this, aside from the motor and it being gas?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Alta, it's actually front heavy, so it has I think it's 51% front heavy, which is a little bit surprising, and it basically doesn't squat, which you can feel when you ride it, of course, as well. But so we analyzed that bike as well to understand the chassis and everything, and then looking at the gas bikes, it was very interesting to look at the flex of the chassis because we measured that in the lab. So the lateral, horizontal, and torsional flex. And yeah, I mean, it's not so surprising. I mean, it's very, very similar of the bikes. You know, people say, you know, aluminium frames versus steel is different, but it's not so different actually when we measured it. They're quite close. The torsional flex of the KTM is has a bit of an S curve. So that's a bit strange. Maybe they fixed that with the latest generation. We haven't analyzed that bike.
What would that mean in a real world kind of scenario, like an S curve in the flex like that? What would you think that translated to ride wise?
Well, I mean, a rider like me, amateur, would never feel the difference, obviously. But if you're a super good rider, maybe it could feel a little bit unpredictable because it's not, you know, like a dynamic curve, possibly. But besides that, they are incredibly similar, I would say. I mean, just looking at ergonomics, the geometry of all the bikes, it's not a big difference. I mean, there are obvious things everyone knows. I mean, Japanese suspension works much better according to our testing. I think, well, I mean, there's things that everyone knows, so it's not really anything else. Personally, I think the KTM motor works better than others, but it's not so relevant perhaps for us.
Yeah.
I don't know what's there.
Because I guess there's not many people really that would be, I guess, tearing a bike apart and analyzing it in the way that you guys are. And to know that you've got, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but you've got basically the chassis genius.
24.
Yeah, so I mean, for him to be able to have all of these current models, like, it'd be very interesting to maybe even hear his thoughts on, like, is he there going like, what the fuck are these people doing? Or is it like, oh, these companies have produced some great motorcycles? Because it's interesting to me because, I mean, you can talk to guys that think that the '08 CRF 450 is the best feeling chassis, or the 2012, and then Cowie's running those same chassis numbers from the '08 Honda. So I mean, we've kind of been playing in this ballpark for a really long time, and I mean, the ability's not even really there to change the flex characteristics because it's like this monocoque frame that's been, you know, once it's done, and I mean, you can change flex with some torque settings on bolts and different materials for engine mounts, but that's really it. So I mean, to have somebody like that is, you know, literally wrote the book on chassis geometry and flex. I mean, just interesting to know, like, did we even get it right at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. I mean, I think it's, you know, if you want to build a really good product, you should always base it upon data, and then, you know, you take it from the data and the drawing board to when you think you have done it right, then you test it with a rider, you know, if the feeling matching what we expected with the data, and if it doesn't, you know, then you have done a mistake in the data. So that's what I really believe is the right, but I think all big manufacturers are probably working like this. I mean, of course they are analyzing, you know, the competition, you know, in great detail, etc. But I think the future, like the motocross segment, is quite interesting that there's only one price level of the bikes. So all the bikes are the same. If you look at bicycle, you can buy a bike for, you know, $100 or $20,000. So it's a huge span in performance and price. But within motocross, there's one. Now there's two in some of the bikes where you get, you know, different exhaust or something like that. But
they've gone up, they've never gone down.
No. You know, could be argued that maybe lately, you know, some manufacturers are more focused on high margin than performance. But I I think there is a possibility in using more high-grade materials to improve the performance of the bikes, reduce the weight, for instance. I mean, the bikes now are built in, 4 to
Lead.
6,000 series aluminium. I don't know. Maybe no. And I mean, like 25 chromoly steel, which is very, very basic. So
Yeah.
I think a lot can be done with titanium or higher grade aluminium and things like that in order to improve the performance and reduce the weight in the future. And maybe there is more room for more price levels. I think many people are spending several thousands on equipping their bike with stuff. Why is no one building a bike that's up to their standards from the start?
Yeah, so you're thinking almost like specialized S-Works kind of stuff. And I mean, I guess Cowie's kind of done it a little bit with their SL or SR, and then you've got the Husky, they do the factory edition, and then the Honda just did the Works edition. I mean, it's marginal though. Like the price difference isn't that much different. I mean, how far are you? Because let's say if you go to mountain biking, an S-Works, you can buy like a stump jumper for $4,000, and then the S-Works version of that same stump jumper is probably worth like 16, 17. I mean, some of the road cycle bikes are $20,000+. So I mean, in your mind, like, are you seeing this as like you could really go up in price, or do you have any of the range in mind, or?
Well, I mean, no, we don't really have a plan for it, but I think it's, if there's a $11,000 Euro bike right now, I think there is space for one that could be 20. I mean, if you're paying 20,000 for a bicycle, why wouldn't you pay 20 for a motocross bike with titanium? That's 4 kilos lighter, titanium frame, shafts, stuff like that. It's possible.
I knew I liked you, Anton.
Sorry?
I said I knew I liked you.
No, but I mean, why not? I mean, A-kit suspension and a bunch of titanium. Who doesn't want that? Everyone wants that, of course.
Every single vet rider right now is just like, sign me up, daddy. But I mean, this kind of, like, this is a cool conversation to have. Like, there's really, again, I think it just speaks to the direction that this could go, like everyone is going kind of like race to the bottom, like how cheap can you make this? How cheap can you do this part? How can you copy this part and sell it as this brand? It really does seem like there's a lot of, race to the bottom type stuff going on when it comes to the industry. And, it's a completely different ethos in other sports, just like cycling. There's guys they're so pumped to be the doctor or the lawyer that's got the $27,000 motorcycle, S-Works bike that he's, taken up to the hill, and literally no one's having that conversation in moto. It's like, how cheap can you make it?
Yeah, and I mean, motocross guys are super passionate. I mean, all my friends, they buy everything that they can, because it's their biggest passion. So it's a bit strange that you don't have that possibility. What do you think, what is the future of motocross? Do you see any other, do you have any dream of, why is no one doing this in terms of technical development of the bikes?
Honestly, I think that the bikes can be so much better in terms of the ergonomics, and I've always dreamed of having a different way to use the throttle, because I just think that essentially you should be in one body position the entire time that you ride. I don't think that you should have to move your hands that much. You definitely shouldn't have to move your feet that much. I think that you should just be able to hold on to the bike and go. So I think that the foot brake is something that is pointless, and that needs to go. And then I think that with no clutch, that goes up on the handlebars, which I think that's a no-brainer, exactly what you said. And there's got to be something, better with the throttle as well, because you think about the position that you're in on a dirt bike. There's a biomechanically correct position that gives you the most access to the most muscle groups activated in the optimal way. So it's like, for me, that doesn't happen when you do this. And that, I think that there's just so much like kind of room for fuckery that goes on. And so you're doing this at the same time as you're doing this, and then you're doing this. Like, I just think that all that shit needs to go out of the window, and it's like you just get in one position and then you just don't really have to move. So whatever that you can do to kind of facilitate that being the thing. And then I think that it makes it to where so many more people can ride. Like my girlfriend right now, she can ride a scooter. Like she can ride a little, step through kind of scooter. That should be, it should be that easy to go like, oh, so if you can ride a scooter, then you could ride a motocross bike. There is no way in hell that I would put her on a motocross bike. And, like...
Unless you want to kill her.
Yeah, easy way to get out of that if it needs to come to that. But I think that it really should be that easy. And it's like, I think that what you guys are doing with the Stark phone and the Stark app, to where you just have like a custom preset. It's like, oh, this is my girlfriend's mode, bang. And then you can have one click on the app and it's like, this is set for her right now. And she gets on. Because like when you're a kid on a Peewee, did you ever have your dad screw in like the throttle so that the throttle couldn't turn all the way? Because that was like
we got the PV.
It's like the first time I rode a bike, I was 4 years old, and my dad screwed the throttle in so that the throttle could only turn like a quarter of a way. So it's like, essentially that's a mechanically bad version of what you guys can do now with just, one button. This is the wife preset. And then you've got your front brake, back brake, no brainer. You've got 12% power, and off you go. So, I mean, I think for me, like that's always something that I thought about, is like, you just need to get a bike to the point where you can just be in like one position, and then you don't have to move. You don't have to move your feet. You don't have to move. And then I think that there's almost like no help in terms of like where you should be on a motorcycle. And I really think that there's like some really easy ways that you could almost just put in like these tiny little like recesses and protrusions in bikes that would almost like guide you into the correct position. Because I think that's the thing that I see in so many, like every time I go to the track, I just see people that they're not enjoying riding a motorcycle because they don't know how to fucking put their feet on the motorcycle. They don't know how far forward is too far forward with their knees, how far back is too far back. So there's some little things that I think could be implemented into a bike that would just make it almost like training wheels for putting your body in the kind of correct position. Because honestly, once you do that, I think that riding just becomes so much easier. And I mean, now that I think about it, like there's so many ways that I think you could, with your bike, you could incorporate, I guess, like guides of like how to actually be on the motorcycle.
That's very interesting. I mean, I think a huge leap forward could be heads-up display, because that can give you so much more information. So I mean, even if we have the display down at the bar pad, you are not gonna look down and focus on that when you're going through a motocross track. You can glance down, and see which ride mode you're in, or potentially quickly see the speed if you want to know that, or battery level. But if you have a proper heads-up display, I mean, you can give the rider real-time information. Maybe you can even create like gamification, like suggest line choices on the track, create like you could make fun stuff, like create a coin in a jump and get this coin, you could do stuff like that, like Mario Kart. I don't know about the throttle, how you would do that. Maybe we can create like a autopilot. We take a fast rider and we just you don't gas, you just hang on.
Yeah, I don't think,
I think that's a horrible idea.
I don't think that's the move. Yeah, the throttle the throttle one is a hard one. I mean, in four wheelers and quads they do like the thumb throttle, and I mean I actually know there is a company that does do a thumb throttle for like KTM's and stuff like that. So there is a company that does it. I've ridden a bunch of quads and stuff before. It doesn't really feel like a backward step, but I just think that, I mean, for example, like we're doing that Fink Desert race in June this year, and it's like I just want to be locked in one position. Like I want to be able to, in those races you have steg pegs that are connected onto the frame, and it stops your legs from going back because you're just wide open for so long. So I mean, I kind of wonder why you can't make these kind of like protrusions that come out of somewhere on the bike that's like just a slot. So okay, my knees are back, because the correct anatomical position, if you watch Jet Lawrence, Chase Sexton, all these guys, their knee line, it does not go in front of the arch of their foot very often. So it's always straight up and down or a little bit backwards. And so if you've got something there's like some tiny little guide there, so that you know that when you're in a standing position that you slide back into those, it locks you in, but it's not inhibiting movement in any way. Like I think that they're some of the things that can really just like help kind of riders going forward. But yeah, it's like for that desert race, it's like you put those steg pegs on the bike, you're locked in, that's where you need to be. And then if you have like a thumb throttle, then you're just locked in. There's no side to side, because if you're here, like you imagine doing a bench press, like essentially you're in a bench press position when you're racing a motocross bike, right?
Yeah.
So can you imagine, then let's say you've got a 25 kilo plate, a 25 kilo plate. You're laying on the bench, and then you get to the top of your bench press, and then you drop this elbow down, and then you try and do the bench press with this elbow drop down. That's what you're doing with the throttle. So it's not exaggerating. A lot of guys aren't doing that, but there is this motion that is in the wrist. You can see any start of a race where you're going from like 0 throttle to 100% throttle, then you're getting that motion, and then you'll see a lot of guys are like adjusting constantly with their body. So I think that there is, kind of might sound like a stupid idea and one of those things like, well, this is how we've always done it. But I really think that just being able to get on a motorcycle and stay in the correct anatomical position that gives you the most stability, it's like it makes sense that you don't really want to leave that position very often. And I think you guys are kind of halfway there by having the rear brake option on the left hand.
That's super interesting. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, throttle today, you have the twist throttle, you have the thumb. Some snowmobiles have like a finger throttle.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. Should be played around with. But I mean, finger would be difficult since you have the rear brake there. Then you have double levers. It gets very messy. I don't think that's perhaps the...
I wonder if there's like a slider kind of thing that you could have. That's like a sensor, like a sliding type of deal. Yeah, we're getting out there, but.
Well, something that I really believe it's gonna happen though, that's more straightforward, is digital suspension, and most likely I would say digital air suspension.
Yeah,
because how many people have the perfectly adapted suspension for their riding?
Zero.
Very few. And I mean, it also depends on which track you're at. Yeah, zero. And so you should be able to develop a suspension which you can adapt digitally, or maybe even by AI. You don't have to adapt it at all. It feels where you're riding and how you're riding.
Yeah.
That should not be too far away. I mean, now to change your suspension settings, you have to rebuild it. It takes hours. It's crazy.
Are you looking
like rebuilding a motor?
Yeah, same thing. Are you looking at because I know that Ducati does electronic suspension, I think on their like V4R or like some of their more expensive models. Are you looking at companies like that are kind of already dabbling in some of this technology?
No, we have not started looking into that yet. But I think it's the future. Then how it's going to happen, and how we will see. But for sure, it has to happen. I mean, I think with the powertrain going to electric, that's a huge revolution. I would say the next huge revolution would be the suspension adapting in a much easier way to how you're riding, and perhaps even lighter also, because it's quite heavy today.
Yeah, and then does that become more of a hardware issue or a software issue? Because now we're really starting we're starting to blur the lines for the first time in motocross to where, or I guess just two wheels, I guess off-road two wheels, where it's like there's hardware challenges, but there's also software challenges. And sometimes a software challenge can actually override the hardware challenge. And we're going from, there's a big shift that's going to happen just of the personnel that are working on these bikes, because it was like yourself, you just started as a mechanic, you're this mechanically minded person that is now, that's like the backbone of this industry and its existing format. But now we're going to be going to this platform where it's like the software engineers are going to, kind of replace, or I guess add on a whole nother group of people that are going to be working on these bikes from going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make it a software challenge, because you need to get rid of all the hardware, because if you need hardware to make change your settings on the suspension, you're not fixing the problem. Because I mean, it's like a new solution needs to be better, I think, in every aspect. You cannot just improve one little thing and then the other thing is getting worse. So it needs to be lighter, it needs to obviously work better, it needs to be adaptable only through a click in your display, or completely automatic. And for that to happen, it needs to be a software issue. So probably the easiest way would make digital air suspension, because the problem with air suspension today is that air changes density so much with altitude or temperature. So and it's actually a similar problem in tires. So I mean, you need to readjust the pressure in your forks all the time, which is ridiculous. No one wants to do that, or will do it. So
and you can't in the middle of a moto.
No, I mean, you have to decide, like, okay, I will set up for a hot suspension, and then when I go out, it's going to be too soft. Okay. Which is, crazy. Same with tires. You go out with a specific pressure and the temperature increases 30 Celsius, is going to change the pressure inside the tires. So you have to make it digital, I think.
And so with the software side of things, I can imagine that's probably one of the most fun parts of this whole deal, is that because I mean, obviously you've ridden the bike, like to go from the maximum power to like really dumbing it down, like when you really get into the settings, like how noticeable is it? And is that like a really fun part of the process for you, is to like build on these software features?
I'm not so involved in the software development. It's very much done by the software engineers and Sebastian. So I can't say that I have really experienced those changes so much. And we're still quite early on in our software development. So testing different ride modes and stuff like that. So I think that is... we know exactly what we can do, and we have tested obviously different power levels, but it's still a little bit early. This is the main focus for the next months, is to evolve all of that and develop the full functionality of the software with the different so we have made adjustments, but now it's done directly in the code, so it's not really,
there's no UI
making
there.
the changes now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's gonna come. I think within the next month we're gonna move over to that. Of course, still optimizing the code in the background, but so now they are changing the power through a phone, but it's in the software directly. So it's still a bit too early for like experiencing that in the best possible way. It's I mean. It's very cool from the aspect that Seb is coming in and saying that I want it to be a little bit more responsive or more engine braking or whatever, and within 1 minute they have changed it. So it's there. The only thing is the UI is it's going to be a different level when you can just drag with your finger and it happens immediately. So
Do you think that'll be ready for the media testing?
Hopefully.
I think that'll be massive.
Yeah. So you're coming for the media testing. I think you booked. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my plan.
That's gonna be so nice to get your first impression of riding the bike. I hope we will have it working till then. That's the plan. But we're not there yet, so we have to see.
So I guess that's a good segue into just the development process. So, I mean, how much right now of the development of the bike is spent with Seb on the bike and riders on the bike versus how much is being done in the lab, essentially?
I mean, when it comes to testing, that is, mostly done at the track right now. But then, of course, all the engineers are working on changing one component from CNC manufacturing to casting it. So you're adding, a few changes to every drawing for that. But from testing, it's mainly done at the track right now.
So how many, I guess, what's a day of testing look like when it goes to the track? Like, are you guys able to, have you got like multiple bikes and then you've got Seb, like, is he out there? Are you to the point where it's like you guys can just ride and you've got multiple units and charging, and it's like quite an active process? Because I could see it being early days when there's like one working model and a small like crew. Has it evolved since there to where it's like you guys are really able to put a bunch of laps on these things nowadays, or?
Yeah, but it's really changing depending on what kind of testing we're doing. So we're adapting the testing quite a lot based on that. So right now they are doing some frame testing. So we are just confirming exactly how the frame is working. So it's pretty cool. We have 2 sensors, or more than 2, but we have sensors on the frame tubes, which have a ridiculous sensitivity. So if you take the top frame tube, and you press it with your fingers, like if you press a steel tube, nothing is going to happen. These sensors show how it's flexing. Because and it's so little, you could, this is a thick steel tube, like it's not flexing, but the sensitivity is so ridiculously high. So that's we're doing that now. And then when we're doing the suspension testing, defining all these different settings, we have 7 different suspension settings based upon your weight. That's a different kind where we're bringing in riders in different weight classes and doing riding, of course, from 65 to 100 kilos. So it really adapts to the kind of testing that we're doing. But
it must just be
it's pretty cool. These
it must just be a cool process.
Insane what you can. No, it's like seeing on a screen. Imagine you're pressing a steel tube and the screen is showing when you're pressing it. Like, that's high level of sensitivity. It's insane.
And so are you, in your mind, like, just as the or a creator, like essentially you're like you're creating this thing from nothing, like this has been in your mind for years. How far ahead are you in your mind as to where you are right now? Like for me, with the podcast, we're in this situation, this is what's real, this is what's actually happening, that's what people are seeing right now. But in my head, I'm like, I'm fucking years down the track. I've got so many ideas and there's so much that I think can be implemented, and different things that I want to do and goals that I want to reach, and it's based off shit that's actually real right now. So it's not all just pipe dreams. So what's that look like in your head?
I need to be careful here because you will think I'm completely crazy if I tell you everything.
I will not.
So, first we're gonna make Stark the market leader in motocross. That's gonna happen quite fast. Second ambition is to sell 1 million motorcycles per year. That will take a few years. While doing that, we will be focused on technical development. We are a technology company. This is the focus. So we might be supplying technology to other companies. So we will do that in parallel, maybe even outside motorcycling. And then I think it's interesting to look like at transport long term. What's my biggest goal in life is always to build a flying car, because I believe it's the most optimal level of human transport. Like if you look at it, how we're traveling today, it's completely ridiculous. We're traveling in a 2D network on the surface of the earth, which is the roads, and it's very much restricted to how those roads are being built. You have crossings, roundabouts, and all kinds of, red lights, etc., which is making it incredibly inefficient. And you're traveling at a quite slow speed, and it's still very dangerous. So it's not really a good system. But if you could travel in 3D, which means you could use different altitude layers, I wouldn't go down in the earth, because then you're still limited to tunnels. But if you're traveling in the air, you can basically always travel in a straight direction to where you're going, from A to Z. You don't need to go to a train station, to another train station, and from that station to where you're going. Now you would travel directly where you're going, straight, and maybe, replacing a car, maybe you can travel in 300 kilometers an hour, or what would that be, 180 miles per hour. Instead of driving an average of 40 miles per hour or 60 kilometers an hour or something like this. So that would be, the average journey would be about 10 times more efficient and much safer and a much nicer experience, because you could be flying at, say, 300 to 500 meters altitude, which is fantastic viewing of the earth, basically. So I think that is my biggest goal, but it's not certain that we will do that with Stark, because I wouldn't risk the company. So I mean, we are focused now on motocross. We will be focused on street motorcycles and developing a few different technologies that we are planning to, and maybe at some point we build flying cars. That would be the real long-term ambition, but that's for sure not certain.
So with the expansion of Stark going forwards, how do you see, like, do you have any kind of roadmap of like the areas that you think it will kind of expand into, like what the logical progression is?
The different categories of vehicles, or?
Yeah, and I guess the way in which you kind of see it making sense.
I'm not sure I understand your question correctly, but I mean, first, now we're going into motocross, obviously, globally. So we're building up a dealer network. We want to work with the best dealers in the world. We're building up that dealer network now, so that when we launch our future motorcycles, we can do that together with our dealers and be, locally available all over the world. This is the plan. So I think we have 700 dealer requests right now, and we have maybe signed contracts with 40 dealers or so across the world. So this is a huge part of building that. So we will have a few hundred or maybe a couple of thousand dealers across the world in a few years. And next bike to launch will be the Enduro model that will come a bit in the future. Same bike but with lights, slightly adaptations of course, but very similar to the Varg. Then we have started the development of 3 street bikes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so
that's
what?
Gonna come as well. Yeah.
So what? I guess what style? Like, is it same thing? Like you go into like the racing side of things first, like a similar mindset, or?
Well, it's the same mindset that when we launch each vehicle, we have to believe it's the leader in each category, that it's the best vehicle for that category. And motocross is so much performance. Other categories, other things will matter more. We still want to be performance leader, but it could be that comfort, convenience is also super important. So it's going to depend on which category, but each vehicle that we launch, our ambition is that it should be the best bike in that category, including all gas bikes. And we are very design focused, so we want to build beautiful motorcycles, beautiful objects that are not just, if you look at motorcycling today, it's, I think, very immature design with everything is very sci-fi. There are angles all over the place. It's graphics that are very aggressive. It looks like kids' toys, all of it, and it's all incredibly plastic. Like everything you touch is plastic. It's like very cheap solutions that are not well integrated. So we want to also elevate the level of the quality impression and the design, the feeling surrounding motorcycles. We want to make beautiful objects that are not only cool to the nerds, but cool and beautiful to any person that would see it. I mean, if you would look at it, like if you show a Ferrari to 100 people, 98 of those will say, wow, that's a beautiful product, because 100%. It is. It's really beautiful. But if you show Yamaha R1 to a normal person and you say, what do you think? They don't even know how to respond. Because the motorcycle industry is, exactly. It's just, it's a mess. It looks like a toy for a kid. And we would like to develop, beautiful motorcycles, beautiful objects that, anyone would, appreciate and like. So that will also be a focus, of course, and increase perhaps the quality impression. Our ambition is to use less plastics, which will also elevate the quality impression of the bike. I mean, everything you touch today on a street motorcycle or motocross feels super cheap. I mean, just the buttons on the handlebar, the throttle, whatever it is not a nice quality standard. So we want to elevate that as well. That's our ambition.
It's so funny that you said that about like the using a Ferrari versus a R1. Man, I feel like you want to talk about, I guess, just like what's like the fundamental properties of the universe, like just to take it that far, right? Quality is a fundamental property. If you take away language, concepts, understanding, scientific knowledge, scientific method, if you just strip back everything in the universe, quality experience, or like a quality visual, a quality taste, a quality smell, like there just is this like 0 and 1 property of the universe, to where it's like 0 is bad, 1 is good. You put your hand on a hot stove, that's not a quality experience. You take a photo of a person's face and the face is not in focus, and then you show a person a photo where the face is in focus. You don't need to know about focus. You don't need to know about cameras. You don't need to know about anything. Quality is just super, super obvious. And I think that, man, sometimes I just think people genuinely forget that that's a thing. And, it's like you watch a beautiful cinematic movie. There's not one time during that movie where the camera's out of focus, unless it's by design. And you don't notice. Yeah. Everyone just goes along about their day without even noticing that there's some immaculately skilled focus puller that is like tracking this person's eye so it stays insanely sharp on this $70,000 lens. That's quality, and people just brush over it. It's like completely this like forgotten part of life. But I think that what you're saying just speaks so much to like quality should just be so overwhelmingly obvious that it like almost gets kind of looked over,
Yeah, I think that's a really good explanation. So I hope you can get a little bit of that sensation when you come during the media days and try the bike.
Yeah, and it does look like that. I mean, even down to, like I said before, about the triple clamps and the integration of the chain adjuster. Like I think it is obvious that is part of the mission for you guys.
Thank you. That's really appreciated. We have a hard-working team on that.
Yeah, definitely. And so what's like, I guess, your day-to-day looking like as a guy that runs this company? Because I mean, it's I guess just aside from like the bike itself, I mean, I've never got the chance to talk to somebody that's in the position that you're in of like running this kind of business, developing this product, bringing this kind of product to market. And I mean, actually, to sidebar even before that, before we get into that conversation, is there any part of you that thought it was important to be to like put a face to this company? Because there's no face to KTM, there's no face to, you know, Honda and those kind of companies. And I personally, I think from a business perspective, anytime there's a face to a company, I think it really humanizes it. I think it makes the messaging become a lot easier and a lot clearer. So I mean, is that something that you guys kind of actively did? You sort of thought that it was maybe going to be beneficial to have a face to this company, maybe before we jump into like the day-to-day running of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. So if you're truly proud and if you truly care about what you're doing, you know, I think you should show your face. I mean, you should not only. So a lot of people, they're only working for a commercial short-term plan. They want to build something up and sell it in a few years, etc. But for me, and I think for a lot of people that are involved in a company, this is more of a lifetime goal. It's not a short-term project and something. We are extremely proud of what we're doing, and I'm very happy I want to speak about it because I'm proud of it, what we're doing, and I think it makes sense. And of course, you know, you could say that you are, you know, if you are showing your face, you know, if you fail, then, you know, that's you failing. It's not a company failing, and I think that's fine because we're not gonna fail, and we're gonna, you know, deliver on our promises. And yeah, we did discuss that. We took a decision that, you know, I will you know, show my face as well, and I think it makes sense if you're truly passionate about what you're doing. I think, you know, you should show that.
I completely agree. Have you ever read Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb?
I haven't.
Have you heard of it?
I can't remember. No, don't think so.
I'm not sure if you're a big reader, but it's a pretty awesome book. And I think that was another thing that kind of stuck out to me when you guys launched, is that there was a face to the company, because it's kind of what you just sort of said there, is there's this extra layer of accountability when you're willing to put yourself out there, and it not be something that just hides behind the brand name. I mean, I think you get these extra points essentially of being able to communicate a specific message, you know, a humanizing element to where if you say like, oh, we might be a couple months late, it's like, if it's coming from a person that you can sense that they're genuine and that, you know, they're not spending everyone's deposit money in Hawaii and on strippers, you know, like, so like you can kind of, there's an advantage to that messaging, but then the downside is that there's all this extra accountability for that if you fail. So I think it also kind of speaks to the just the overall brand in general, that there's an element of risk taking there that people might not appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I have spent 2 or 3 years working on this, doing nothing else every waking minute. I'm absolutely not making any money. I'm not taking any salary at all. I'm putting in all my money into this to make it happen because I want to do it, and that's what, you know, the other people are doing as well that are involved. Our investors and our team are, you know, incredibly focused on that. And it's, if you look at the deposits, you know, that's a very small amount. That's not financing our operations. The only purpose of the deposit is to know that it's a confirmed order, so that we are planning our production correctly. Because if we let people book orders without the deposit, you know, we don't know if it's real orders. So, I mean, we are building a huge factory. We're investing many millions. So we need to know that it's real orders. That's the purpose of the deposit. And it's we are financing it, and so. But I think, you know, $100 makes sense. No one wants to give away $100, so I think people are making an order. They are committed to completing the purchase, But at the same time, it's an amount that you can't put down. It's not changing your economy. It's not something. So it makes sense, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess to your like day to day of like running the company. So I guess what do those days kind of look like with you, and where does most of your energy go to kind of getting this project off the ground?
Well, I mean, this is a 24-hour business, so every waking minute is working. Either you wake up and you work from home, and then you go into the office. You're there for 12 hours, working hard, and I mean, everyone in the team is so dedicated. So it's really fantastic to see that this is not just me. It's everyone in the company is dedicating all their time to making this, because they believe in the project. And so my majority of my time is spent focused on the production, working with our suppliers, planning internally, building the organization. This year we are recruiting maybe 80 people, so it's starting that process. It's quite a lot of work. We need to build all of these departments. A month ago we didn't have a sales department. Okay, now we have a sales department. We have a sales director, and we have sales managers in UK, France, Italy. We have Jeff managing Australia and New Zealand, and we have the rest of it coming. We're expanding our engineering and design departments so that we can not only develop one bike, but now we have started developing those 3 bikes, but fully run those projects. So it's very much connected to I would say the majority of my time is the production and working with our suppliers to make sure that we receive all these components in time.
Yeah,
it's very challenging also now within the electronics industry. Thankfully we have confirmed orders already a year ago with all the different electronics components that goes into the bike. Since we're developing everything from the ground up, we're buying every single little chip, so it's a quite massive process. And I mean, then we're spending time on development, which directions to take and so on, and also planning the future. But we have some cool stuff to show. I think in quite short time we can also show a couple of things that are included with the bike that we didn't show before, that I think would be very nice for the people that decided to buy the bike, that it's just elevating the experience a little bit more. So yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I'm in meetings every single minute, basically from 9 till 8 every day, and then outside those hours you're working. But it's an extremely tense period right now, where you cannot. It's a bit like, I think, if you're working very hard towards a goal as an athlete or something, like you need to do everything perfectly. You need to make sure that you sleep, you need to make sure that you eat, you cannot drink alcohol, because it's such a focus. Your brain has to work perfectly all the time, because otherwise you will make mistakes, and then that will delay the project, and we can't have that. So it's an extremely intense period with very, very long days with an incredible focus, but it's from everyone, I think so.
And so,
but the hardest thing for us right now is production.
Yeah, and so I guess, did you feel this level of, I guess this is just speaking personally, because I mean, I've got a couple of friends that I've got that are kind of got this similar, you're doing it on a pretty high level, and there's I guess just the level of pieces that are being moved around, and the money and the issues that could kind of come from a fuck up, essentially. So I mean, there'd be a lot of pressure on you. But I mean, I think that anyone that's like really in their business, like this for me is a 24-hour a day thing, and I mean, there's been some philosophy changes in my life over the last kind of 3 years, 2 to 3 years, when this starts doing better. Like, you've almost got to mold yourself as a person to facilitate like the growth of the business, you know? So, I mean, this type of stuff is like super interesting to me, because I guess I'm always in that same process of like, what you said, like, all right, sleeping, and, you know, like, I don't drink, I don't party, there's all this shit I don't do, and then there's all this stuff I do. Like, to me, I do like martial arts. That's a non-negotiable for me. Like, I have to do that every day. I have to read every day. I have to meditate every day. Like, I've kind of eliminated a bunch of things in my life and then tried to just go all in on like a select few verticals that are then in the, I guess, in an effort to make the product better, you know? So it seems like, well, I mean,
Yeah.
without even knowing you, like, that has to be what you're doing to be pulling off the company that you're pulling off.
Yeah, I'm very extreme as a person, so I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think you can see that also with your podcast that you have created. You know, it's a very high level of quality, and you're elevating, and I think the industry in that perspective. So, you know, you're doing what's needed, and it's also working. So that's always cool to see that happening. And
I appreciate that.
For me, I run 5K every single morning, because otherwise my brain doesn't work properly. It's a huge difference for me mentally if I'm exercising, especially running. Then I have a nutritionist, so I'm quite like I have specific supplements and food that I'm eating, you know, to make sure that you're optimized, because it makes a huge difference actually. And then I'm working super hard, and when you're doing that, I cannot fall asleep if I don't do breathing exercises. So me and my girlfriend are doing breathing exercises every evening, and then we fall asleep, because otherwise the brain never stops spinning.
Yeah,
and then you can't sleep, and then you're fucked the next day. So it's like, you know, you need to do the right things. I also do cold bath after every run. So that's
yeah, okay.
So very nice to clear your mind.
Do you do any meditation at all? I'm guessing that's kind of what the breathing stuff is in a way.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of meditation. I would say that it's a 10-minute thing. Super nice.
Yeah, okay. And so, like, what's
but
your...
I don't...
Oh, sorry, keep going.
No, I mean, no, it's just, I think it's the same thing as meditation. For me, it's just, like, I don't have any patience. So, like, I tried to do a yoga class once, and wait, it's not for me. I can't do it. I have, you know, I have too much energy. Can't do it. But the breathing exercise works incredibly well for me. Very straightforward.
And what kind of breathing exercise? Is it like a Wim Hof type thing, or is it?
Yeah, Wim Hof.
Yeah, okay,
so he
cool.
has like a 11-minute program. You're breathing fast, you're holding your breath, and things like that.
Yeah,
it works super well for me.
And then so you're pretty much asleep by the end of it.
Cold bath.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
Works really well.
I normally, I pretty much meditate every night before bed. I just do it in bed. I try and do one every morning where I'm like, it's actually sitting, like you'd call it like a more formal practice of it. And I'll do that in the morning, and I always feel a bit more just like ready for a day of work, if that makes sense. Like, I just feel like it's a bit of a fresh start. If I don't meditate and I just walk out the door, I feel like there's already momentum going, and it could be good, it could be bad. Like, there's not that much control. So I feel like that's probably similar to your run, you know. And I feel like reading does that same thing for me as well. I like to read in the mornings, and then I'll do that. But yeah, I've actually recently been listening to, they've just added this lady. She's actually a nun at a monastery, and she reads all these like classic Dharma texts from like the Buddha and a bunch of like Dharma Rinpoche and like all these kind of Nepalese like masters of meditation, and they just actually added that. So that's like been my new thing of listening to these. They're like 20-minute sort of deals, and I cannot finish one. I'm out every night, because sleep has actually been a huge challenge for me my entire entire life, just like literally can't sleep. So that's actually been something that is bang, I'm gone.
I think sleeping is a superpower. Like people that can fall asleep in strange situations, I'm so jealous.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like in a car or something, or in a plane. Like I cannot. I wish it's like if I could have one superpower, sleeping whenever I wanted, for sure.
Do you track your sleep at all?
No, I have done it in the past. I'm not doing it right now.
Oh, track your sleep. Honestly, it's like that's been the. I read a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. It's a pretty famous book on sleep, but it was brilliant. And I was always the kind of guy that I'd say I was like never a morning person, and I always would kind of stay up late working, and then I'd wake up at, like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And then I just sort of found I couldn't really get enough shit done. So I was like, I really need to start waking up at 5 a.m. if I want to like actually get some stuff done, which meant I had to go to sleep. I kept going to sleep at the same time, and then I was like, this just isn't working, so I had to sort of get it back. But I read this book, completely changed my mind. I basically committed to 8 hours sleep for probably the last 2.5 years. And like I was just overseas in Bali, and there's a 2-hour time difference. And I basically woke up at 3 a.m. every single day that I was in Bali, because I'd been so used to waking up at 5 a.m. for the last 2.5 years. But I do the Garmin. Wow. I do like the Garmin thing now. So I've got the watch. I just keep that on when I sleep. And it basically will tell you the amount of deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep, and the amount of time that you spend awake. And I actually, when I first got the watch, I wasn't getting as much deep sleep. So then I started taking some supplements to make sure, because there's windows of what sleep cycle you should be getting at what period of time. So yeah, I found out that I wasn't getting as much deep sleep. So then I started taking a supplement, and then the deep sleep improved. And yeah, it's like every day you get a sleep score when you wake up. So you can kind of tell, it goes off like your sleep and heart rate, and then heart rate variability as well. So like every day you get like this body battery score, and there'll be times where I just didn't sleep good enough to recover fully from the day. And then if I've got like a hard training plan, I'll scale it back. So you're kind of always able to monitor your, I guess just like energy and recovery levels and stuff like that. So if you want to go full
that's
nerd,
super cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's maybe I have to get that watch. I have the Apple Watch right now. I don't know if that has the same functionality, but
I think
like something that makes a lot of sense.
I think the heart rate variability is the main thing, because that's essentially I know that the Apple Watch does your heart rate, but I don't think it measures the timing in between each heart rate. The other thing these things do, not to make it a Garmin ad, but they have like a stress indicator that's based off your all of those kind of things in conjunction as well. And I remember there was one night when I first got it, I was driving, I actually just smoked weed too. And then I got like that anxiety, like that weed anxiety. And I was like, fuck, this would be a good time to check the watch. And I like literally had like the highest stress. So it actually matched up when I physically felt anxiety. But it's been cool, like through the day while I'm working, it's sort of made me more mindful if I am getting in that kind of, you can kind of get flustered or stressed a little bit, and it's like momentum builds. So it's actually like a good little reminder to just like do some breathing and actually like bring that stress level down. So yeah, anyway, it's been super cool. So if you're into that kind of stuff, it's actually pretty cool deal.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'll check that watch out, see if that makes sense. My nutritionist bought me or asked me to buy one of heart rate monitor does the same, but it goes around your chest. So maybe the watch is a better idea.
Well, so yeah, I've got the same.
Measure, I think the same way.
Yeah, so I do the when I like train, I do the heart rate monitor around the chest. It's a little bit more accurate, but then it just sends the data back to the watch. So essentially, like, you have it on for 24 hours a day, so you can monitor everything. But how long did it?
Okay, cool.
Like, I'm sure that you started so young in business that this wasn't your routine. Like, you kind of really grow into these kind of things over time. Like, how long has it taken you to get to like this version of you that gets the right sleep, has a nutritionist, does the runs, does the breathing? Because it's not easy to build those kind of habits. Like, it takes quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, it took me 10, 12 years to realize it.
Yeah.
So, because if you're not pushing yourself too hard, I mean, these things are going to make less of an impact. Like, if you have a more easy life, but if you're pushing yourself super, super hard physically or mentally or both, this makes a tremendous difference. And I guess that's what you're talking about as well. But I had, you constantly feel you get memory losses. You feel when you have bad days, you're not happy with your sharpness, or you have stress that's not going down. You're not able to sleep. All of these things. And I mean, it's just so obvious that either you fix it or it's going to become a really big problem.
Or it'll hinder your growth completely.
Yeah, or you have to, you can continue. Maybe you can continue working hard, but you're gonna hit the wall eventually. So it's just a way, I think, to be healthy and also improve your performance. So it's that or backing down a bit, I think, is for me, it's like the option.
I think
now if you find a good routine.
I think it's cool too when you said that you do it with your girlfriend, because I think that there's a lot of people out there that would, and it's probably been me in the past, where you'd feel a little bit like self-conscious about trying to get your girlfriend to do like this breathing exercise before bed or whatever. So I even think that shows a pretty solid commitment to the whole process that you're going on, because it's like, all right, babe, we're fucking doing this every night, like, because it's hard. It's honestly hard to kind of do that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean, then it's also a balance. Like, you can take it to such an extreme, when you're only focused on your health and performance, but then sometimes you also need to let go. So I'm not completely sober. The only thing is that I know I cannot drink during the week, and then if I have a dinner with some friends on a Saturday or whatever, I'm drinking, and I know it's negative, but it's sometimes it could be worth the sacrifice, to also have a bit of fun.
And so how, like, where does learning come into the picture for you? Like, how much are you actively trying to learn new skills or like learn new parts of business? Like, are you, I guess, like just a student of the game in general? Because I mean, for me, like, that's one of the things with reading why I love that. I'm always trying to learn new things. I think obviously in my business it helps with like having shit to talk about, but yeah, I think that always kind of feels like important. So I mean, is that something that you're kind of focused on as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do reading because I don't find the time. I love to read, and I did it a lot in the past, but right now it's not possible. I love to learn. My biggest interest is with technology. So, I love the sessions we have together with our technical teams, with Paul, the rest of the engineering team, and the creation team, etc. To just, okay, we have this issue. How are we gonna solve it? And first of all, finding solutions to those things, but also understanding new technologies, like how the power electronics are working. That's pretty sophisticated, and how you can, how is an inverter built up, what are the different components, how could you make it better, what are the challenges, and things like that. For me, that is the most interesting thing, to understand on a deeper level exactly how everything works and how you could make it better.
Yeah,
because in the end, that's what matters the most.
Yeah, and I guess, like, I can see how building the company that you are, there'd be so much just to learn internally. Like you I'm sure you'd go home with study material every night, to where you're coming across terms in meetings that you've never heard before from engineers or, software developers or, machinists. And then, you're kind of having to go home and, read about that particular technology or that particular terminology. Like I could see that you'd actually have so much within your own world that you could kind of be trying to learning the whole time.
Yeah, I was talking to Christian von Koenigsegg last week. I don't know if you're familiar with the supercar from Sweden.
Oh yeah.
It's like the It's like the world's fastest car. They also make electric drivetrains. Now it's hybrids, but they're quite they are super innovative, and I think it's probably the most technically advanced car in the world. Yeah, but so we were discussing a few different things, and I told him about one idea that we had, which is I can't really go into detail, but and then to share that, and he had some more information, sent over a paper on that, and get deeper into it, understand on a deeper level on some weird stuff, so that you can figure out how you can make a better product in the future. For me, that's the most interesting thing. But I think that's quite deep in our core, the company to be focused on those things. That's why we cannot resist, when we make a chain tension or a foot peg, to find a new way of doing that better than what was done before. And it's super interesting. And our focus as a company is really technology, design, and sourcing. So these are the three areas where we want to understand. So sourcing can also be very interesting in understanding technology, like how can you produce a better product in a reasonable cost, because maybe you can 3D print the whole bike in titanium and it's going to cost you 10 million. It's going to be 20% lighter, but it's going to be 10 million. So you can also learn, production technologies, so that you can make it a great product, but also at a reasonable cost. That's when it becomes truly interesting, I think, to get both aspects of that.
Yeah, I heard a podcast with Elon Musk, and he was talking about basically how he approaches all of his products, whether it's cars or rockets or whatever, is basically what is the raw material cost. If you add up, you've got these cubic centimeters or inches of this material on the bike, and then you've got this, of titanium, of this type of alloy, of this type. What is the cheapest you could possibly buy those raw materials? And then he basically says that's the cheapest version of this motorcycle or car that we could make. And then he's basically working backwards from that, and then it just becomes like a scale and sourcing problem.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do as well. If you look at the bike, the raw material cost is maybe a little bit more than 500 euro.
That's crazy to think.
So it's but it's the same for all products. So the cost is refining those materials into components. So that's where you need to start. So if you look at and it's also that makes it so much easier to understand how you can make better products, because then you have someone producing a brake cylinder in 4000 series aluminium, which is like the shittiest grade of aluminium you can find. And the cost for aluminium is now maybe for that grade, maybe €2.5 per kilo or something like that. And then you look at, okay, but what's the cost for 7000 series aluminium, which is the highest grade? Well, maybe that's €4 to €5. So it's double the cost, but that's per kilo. You're not using that much weight to make that.
It's negligible, yeah.
And if you, and also if you use a higher grade, you reduce the amount of material you use. So it's not. It doesn't have to. It's not going to be double the raw material cost, which is still negligible, right? But it's going to be less than that. So if you're looking at, okay, let's say subframe in aluminium. Normally a subframe is 1 kilo. The raw material cost in a cheap aluminium is €2.5. raw material cost in an expensive is 5. That's 2.5 euros in difference. And the properties are more than twice as good in the higher grade. So it means you can make it significantly lighter. And so the production cost doesn't have to be more, or the difference is so small.
Yeah.
So if you're
and I guess that
how you can produce it in the right way.
And people, like if you're just looking at it from like the spreadsheet perspective of how many kilos, we can cut half the cost by going to here, but you're not taking into consideration like all of these other variables. Like if you really get into like more of a meta analysis, then you can see that you actually can build a better, twice as better product for, pennies on the dollar more.
Yeah, absolutely. Could we take a bathroom break? Is that possible?
Yeah. We're almost done. We've almost done 3 hours. So yeah, go to the bathroom and then we'll wrap her up.
That was well needed.
Oh yeah. You could have got up any time, eh? Well, sorry, I should have told you.
Thank you.
I should have told you at the start that you could get up.
I was once. No worries. I was once in a poker game in Saint Martin, and I was like 18 years old, and I went in with like $20, and this is like a huge casino, and I won up to 150, and for me at the time I was like, wow, I made $100. That's incredible, But then I had to pee so badly. and I was too afraid to ask, can I leave the table? Because I didn't know. And I spoke English, but I was like a young guy. So I just lost the money because I got too stressed. So I had to get out of here.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
How long have you been speaking English for?
Since I was very young. In Sweden, everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, my father used to speak English to me when he picked me up at kindergarten.
Yeah, right.
So I had to learn. Yeah. But it's also a big difference with Sweden versus other European countries is that we don't do voiceover, so all the movies are in English, etc.
Yeah.
So you learn a lot through that. And in Germany, Italy, Spain, France, it's all voiceover, so they never hear English. So that makes a big difference, I believe.
Yeah, because that's one of the things, I guess, like starting the Euro studio, like I was wondering with the, like obviously there's a language barrier to an extent, even, most people do speak, English over there. But, to a point, it's not your native language. So, it's always going to be that little bit harder.
Yeah, no, for me, maybe I'm not so good, but I'm equally bad in Swedish, so for me it makes no difference really.
Yeah, not saying that your English hasn't been bad. I just thought of more in general, like just doing the studio. I'm like, I wonder if this will be a challenge. But like we've done 3 hours extremely easily. So we definitely got through a bunch of stuff, and I'm super excited. I think for me, gives me something to talk about. That's one thing. But as a fan of the sport, as a fan of technology, to see it going forward and the way that you guys are pushing, and I've been on board from the start. Like just seeing everything that came out. I think that on every level that you could kind of like analyze the company from what I've seen so far and the conversations we've had, I think you guys are really doing it right, and it's a real chance. Like I never really got the sense with Alta that this is going to be the one that changes everything, and I think it was like, I was like, oh cool, like that's pretty rad. I definitely would like one of those bikes, but it wasn't an industry changing kind of feeling that I had. And this since day one, I'm like, fuck, this could actually be the one that does it, because someone has to do it.
Exactly, it has to happen eventually. So I think it's gonna happen now.
and you know what,
but it's really interesting going back to
sorry, keep going.
I was just thinking about what you mentioned with raw materials, and we are very much thinking the same, because the processing of different materials, of course, you need to look at how can you minimize the processing cost. But that's also, you can look at how cheap you can produce a product, but it also allows you to make a better product without increasing the cost so much more. Like titanium, I don't understand why we're not using more titanium in motocross bikes. It makes so much sense. It's just, I think there's a misconception that titanium breaks easily, but it depends on, you know, using the right alloy, the right grade of titanium. So for instance, titanium grade 5, which, you know, just, you know, simply spoken is like the best grade titanium, the raw material cost is 40 to 50 euros per kilo. So if you would build a 100 kilo bike, that's 4,000 to 5,000 euro in raw material cost. So let's say that all the processing would stay the same, and obviously that's not the case, but if we could replace all the materials with titanium, we would only increase the production cost 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah.
Which is not true, because it's also lighter. You know, you would reduce the cost, the weight. So it wouldn't be 100 kilo. It would be less. Now, of course, you can only replace all, but you know, steel is basically a 1-to-1 replacement. Then you cannot produce titanium in all forms, but you know, it has a tremendous advantages. So it would make a lot of sense, for sure.
Yeah.
But sorry, I was interrupting you. You said something else.
No, well, technically I was interrupting you. I was going towards the next thing. I actually can't remember what I was going to ask, but yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty cool I think it's just cool for the general population within the sport to just have access to these kind of conversations, you know, like I personally feel quite close to KTM in the sense that, I mean, I ride those bikes, I own those bikes. I'm quite close with Leesky, and he was the guy that run them here, and he was kind of the face. And then you look at KTM and Austria, they feel kind of attainable for the average guy, more so than like the Japanese manufacturers. But I mean, I've never had a conversation with, you know, someone that's this deep in that world over there. And I think it's just honestly like a cool, unique thing for the industry to go through, to like have these levels of conversations where it's like, yeah, we should be using more of this, and you know, this is the way that we are thinking, and this is the way that other people are thinking in manufacturing. And I don't know, it just feels like we're kind of getting access to something that we've never really had that much access to before when it comes to Stark.
Who do you think will make the next electric bike?
Surely it's KTM.
You think so?
Well, they've got the free ride. I mean, I don't know if they still
stopped producing that now.
Yeah, okay.
They just stopped it.
Oh, so it is done. I wonder. I think Yamaha has something with. I think there's like a battery company or like a power unit company that's like partnered with Yamaha, and then they're using like Yamaha chassis and kind of doing like a retrofitting. So I don't know the level of involvement that Yamaha has with that. And then I think that Honda's producing one. They've got like one that they've kind of had under wraps in Japan. So I feel like it's sort of...
it's Mugen.
Oh, okay.
It's not Honda. It's connected to Honda, but it's a completely separate company. They only do prototypes, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Not 100% sure.
So what's your feeling on the future of it?
No, I'm just a bit curious actually, because KTM, they have clearly said that they don't believe in electric technology.
Really?
Yeah, their CEO had a statement, I think 1 month ago, saying that it was in German. I don't speak German, but someone told me that the direct translation is like e-mobility is bullshit. So it doesn't seem to be so keen on electric technology.
So I'm way off base.
And in their annual report that they sent out, or quarterly perhaps, they're showing like a future plan where there's some sort of new freeride coming out, but it's a low power vehicle. It's more like a bicycle without pedals.
Yeah, okay.
So I mean, they might change their strategy. I think clearly the KTM Group's ambition is to be market leader. They are market leader today. So our ambition is to become market leader. If we succeed with that by using electric technology, probably at some point they will follow. But you have to see. I don't know. The the Yamaha project is a completely separate company here in Holland or Belgium. Can't remember. That is just buying the chassis, I believe. So I don't think Yamaha is involved. Mugen, I mean, it's connected to Honda, but it's not Honda. I don't know, really. It's gonna be interesting to see. Maybe it's not one of the existing ones. Maybe it's another company coming out. But I hope there will be more bikes.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that it's cool to even be like open to that competition too, because I think that that's sort of what it's gonna take, is like multiple companies kind of pushing, because market share is going to be the thing that dictates the direction that all companies have to go in. Yeah.
But I mean, they're all commercially driven, so I mean, it's going to be similar as the car industry, I believe. Tesla started in 2003, and the big automobile companies, they started developing electric cars, maybe 5 years ago? Like, seriously. So it took them 15 years. I think it's probably going to be faster, but they will probably start at some point.
Yeah. So I guess to close it off, is there anything that we haven't touched on? I think we've definitely we've covered a bunch of different topics. Hopefully that there's not anything that I've kind of missed or left out. But yeah.
No, I think we have covered the most topics. It's been a super interesting conversation, and it's going to be very fun to see what the future will bring and how the market will. I think it's clear from a consumer perspective that this is a very interesting product. It's makes a lot of sense. We will see how fast racing will integrate it. It seems it's working incredibly fast. So I mean, if there's any other federation listening to this call, please reach out to us if you have any questions about electric technology or and so on, because there are thousands of customers all over the world that will have these bikes and they will want to race. So I think it's good to start working on adapting the rules now, and it's happening in many countries already. So no, I don't know if there's anything else really. I think we have covered a lot of areas.
Yeah, well,
it's gonna be nice to see your first impression of riding the bike.
Yeah, I'm super excited. To get over there. Also, I'm keen to talk to Sebastian as well. Obviously, talk to Josh quite extensively about it, and I mean, I'm interested to see how this does too. I think that there's a real thirst for information around the bike, and I've definitely tried to do my best to bring as much info as or like get as much info as I could to hopefully answer most people's questions that they have had. But I mean, it's something that anytime we post videos about it, it's gone crazy with views and comments. So I think that people are really interested. And I was thinking before we I come in here to do this with you, I was watching everything again, and I was just thinking about, I was like, fuck, man, like I'm probably going to be loading up one of these things in my truck in the next 12 months. And all my trucks that I ride on a gas-powered bike, like I'm probably not going to be doing that as much. And I'm probably going to be picking that bike over all. And I mean, I've got like six motocross bikes. Like I love bikes, and I love building them. I love tinkering. I love all of it. I'm probably not going to ride those bikes that much once this thing is in my shed at some point, and it feels far away, but it's not. It's literally here. I mean, it's probably within 12 months. And that to me, like, you take away everything else. That to me feels crazy, that it's like, this is actually right here. And then, to be riding one in a couple months, I think is going to be... Yeah, it's just snuck up on everybody, and it's right here before us.
Yeah, it's happening incredibly fast. I think it's the fastest transition of any vehicle category to electric, as far as I'm aware. Because we were on December 12th, the electric penetration of motocross was 0%.
Yeah.
And this is, if you look back since then till now, this is the best selling motocross bike in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, by unit for sure.
So that's it's gonna happen very fast, and a year from now, every track you go to, you're gonna see these bikes.
Yeah. So this is something I was gonna actually ask when we were kind of talking before, but have there been moments in this whole deal where you have just been insanely fucking stressed and just like really tripping on what you got yourself into?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't. Saturday we went for a ride, motocross. I couldn't ride. It wasn't possible. I couldn't focus. I was too fucked up.
Really?
Yeah, it was not possible. So I just went out a few laps, but I almost crashed, overjumped a lot.
So what's in your head that's like got you that fucked up?
It's that where you have super focus on something, but you have it every single minute for 15 hours per day for a number of days. Eventually your brain, you run out of capacity, so you just need to recover. So I needed to recover for 1 or 2 days. Now I feel fantastic again, but Saturday I was completely smashed. Couldn't speak, couldn't ride a motorcycle. But yeah, that's how it is. That's when you need to go out and run, take a cold bath.
Yeah.
You feel better.
No, I get it. I mean, I honestly can't. I'm dealing with my own business and whatever, and I probably, it's on my mind a similar amount of time, but just the stakes are nowhere near as high. Like I can't imagine, doing what you're doing with the stakes that you're kind of playing this game at. It must be a pretty gnarly experience to go through, and one that not that many people would be able to appreciate, I'm sure.
But I don't see that. Like it's a pretty straightforward path from where we are. It's a huge challenge, but it's very straightforward. So it's like, okay, you have this mountain to climb. It's very tall, but this is the way we're going. We know we know where to go. It's gonna burn our legs for sure, but we know the path. So I think it would be fun.
Nah, sweet. Well, I appreciate it, man, and couldn't think of a better first podcast to do in the new European setup. So I really appreciate you took a flight to get here and you stayed the night and did the whole deal. So I'm personally just appreciative and humbled that you do that for our show. And yeah, I hope that we can talk more. I hope that this feels like a place where you guys can come and talk about whatever it is that you guys have. I'll always have an open door for you guys, just purely in the interest of wanting to support the future. So yeah, you guys will always have me as a ally going forward in that respect. So yeah, anything that I can do to help out, definitely reach out.
Thanks, man. Really, really appreciate it, and thank you for inviting me to come here. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, I appreciate you bringing up these subjects so that people can hear more about electric future. I'm looking forward to see you soon in Barcelona.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I've never been to Barcelona, so I'll pretty excited just to do that. I'm definitely not keen for the flight from Australia, but we'll make it happen.
Sounds good. Cool. Thank you very much.